Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 17th episode of the story in which Naruto almost dies at Final Valley, but fate still wants him to live. The Shinigami takes an interest in Naruto and makes him its first summoner. Watch Naruto as he shows the world what it's like to summon the Death God. This story comes from Kyubigoku. Make certain to support him, her. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Dream. Naruto didn't know how this happened. Cursing, he flipped through the air as large wind's bullets brushed past his body. His heart pumping fast, Naruto gripped his sword while glaring down towards his unknown assailant. Neither said anything to each other. For some reason the words were lost in Naruto's throat and he assumed the same for his opponent, but right now that didn't matter. He would have to think about such things later. Landing on the ground, Naruto gripped the hilt of his sword before dashing forward in his best speed. His opponent smirked before raising their own sword and sped off in unfathomable speed before the two forces collided and clashed swords. The pressure from their swords and their respective power sources lit up the forest that they were in. Despite being so close to the person, Naruto still couldn't see his or her face, but their lips came into view and it was a sight that he noticed them beginning to move. It would be a shame if that mask broke. Naruto said in his thoughts while the person finished mouthing the words to him before a smirk appeared on their non-existent face. What mask? Naruto mouthed more to himself, but since his mouth was moving then the assailant read the words too. The smirk never left their face before their arms went into the air. Instinct taking over, Naruto jumped back and resumed his Uzumaki Kenjutsu stance. The phantom quickly vanished and Naruto widened his eyes. He looked left and right, up and down, but he didn't see anything to give the person away before he gasped. He felt malicious intent and ducked his head as a sword swing appeared right where he stood. He lowered himself to the ground before widening his eyes as the assailant's foot slammed into his face sending Naruto spiraling through the ground and out of the forest into a large lake. Naruto didn't recognize this terrain, but it was obvious that the assailant did. Falling through the air, Naruto shook his head and backflipped once more to land in the wet surface of the water keeping him above it. He took shallow breaths while the phantom person appeared in front of him and mouthed. Look at you, how pathetic, Naruto thought the assailant said before scowling. He then noticed the person point their finger to him and then point downward at the water. Naruto didn't know what made him do it, but he looked down and surprise wasn't even the completely correct word to describe how he was feeling. Widening his eyes, Naruto looked at his reflection. He was wearing a mask. It had a face so similar to Shin. Two large horns at the top of the forehead, sculpted nose, dark eye openings where his eyes could see and finally a mouth filled with jagged teeth finished the mask itself. However, as Naruto looked closer he noticed that his eyes were silver-colored, but his pupils were slits. What did this? Naruto thought to himself and as if sensing his inner turmoil, the assailant's laugh echoed through the walls of Naruto's mind. It never occurred to Naruto that he could now hear it so well. Dai Shinigami Summoner. The person shouted as his firm hands grabbed a hold of Naruto's mask and with that, his face. Naruto widened his eyes before his mask slowly started to crack into pieces. Naruto could do nothing but scream. Reality, Oni-sama? 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 Naruto's eyes jolted open before pain seeped into his eyes and he covered them with his hands. He had just opened his eyes wide to the rays of sunlight letting him know that it was morning. He noticed he was panting considerably before turning his head to see Cheyenne looking at him worriedly. Cheyenne. What happened? Naruto asked and Cheyenne blinked. You were having a bad dream. You're sweating, Cheyenne said and Naruto frowned slightly before letting out a small sigh. So that was just a dream, thank goodness. Naruto steadied himself while he felt a soothing wet cloth on his forehead. He turned and noticed Cheyenne gently wiping his head from the sweat and he couldn't help but give her a small smile. Thanks, Cheyenne-chan, Naruto said, and Cheyenne immediately blushed and looked away before smiling. It's fine. I want to go home, so I want to make sure that you're better, Cheyenne responded. Naruto slowly nodded in agreement before leaning himself up. As he did, he winced and touched his forehead. Seems like that small matter still wasn't settled. Well, are you ready to continue? Naruto asked. Cheyenne turned to look at him before slowly narrowing her eyes. She quickly pressed her face unbearably close to her cousin's before giving a decent half-glare. She quickly pulled her finger back before plucking Naruto in the head. That's my line, Oni-sama. Are you going to be alright? Cheyenne asked worriedly. She had just gotten potential family back and she would be damned if she lost him that easily. Granted, Cheyenne wasn't that much of a fighter, but she was stubborn and she would get her way eventually. Plus, fighting wasn't completely her strong suit, but she did have a good thing about herself that no one else did. It was what made her this way. She would do her job, priestess ANG, and predicting. That was her strong suit. Naruto, for his part, merely looked at Cheyenne's eyes before looking off. While he would have liked to tell her that he had a minor headache and he felt like he was working on only 70% or so of his Honshu capacity, the stubbornness in him made him address her, otherwise stating that the blonde male Konoha member was fine. Nodding to his consent, Cheyenne slowly backed away on the tree branch before Naruto stood and brought her to her feet. Both got into their original position with Cheyenne holding on to Naruto's neckline while he held her up against his back. Naruto shot off through the trees in an effort to make up some lost time. Naruto had to reunite with Sai, Kakashi, and Sasuke. Hopefully, they weren't going to be too late. The alternate compound was just a few miles away and there truly was no more time to lose. Shrine compound, yes, that's good. Just like that. Hold it steady. Yugao instructed as she looked at a large scroll in front of her dictating the layout of the shrine and its compound. People continued to work as they drew the seals that Naruto had taught to Yugao. Along with her was Yamato doing the exact same. Since the group had left, Yugao took to some of her own instructions and began making arrangements. Ever since her group had left, she had a feeling in her body that something heavy was going to go down, something that was truly going to have a place for these seals. She hoped that she was wrong. She had this feeling before. It was right before Hayate died, but she had passed it off as nothing. Now she wouldn't do that again. Yugao-san, everything is in place, though I think you're paranoid, Yamato said, trying to speak with one of his former Umbu associates. When everyone heard that the next heir to the Umbu commander position had declined for another team, it was a shock to the other Umbu. Most had to pick up the pace to compensate for Yugao's leaving. Some took it better than others. Yamato was one of those people, though he greatly missed the young middle-aged woman. Yamato, you should remember that paranoia is justified in our line of work. If you're done with that side, then begin with the outer rim, Yugao instructed. Yamato sighed, but didn't refute a nod as he rushed off, or well, he would have if he hadn't heard someone shouting. Yugao, said woman, looked up from the plans and was surprised to see Yuna dashing through the trees. With Sakura on her back. Yamato widened his eyes before he and Yugao quickly ran out of the front doors of the compound to go meet Yuna on the dirt road. Yuna landed down from the trees with Sakura on her back before setting her down on the ground. What happened? Yugao asked while Yamato quickly tended to Sakura. Her body looked like it had seen a lot worse than ever before, not to mention the slight throbbing in Sakura's right arm. Yamato quickly picked Sakura up into his arms while Yuna explained. We were attacked. We had assumed that the priestess died, but Naruto-sama went to investigate. He found some unusual information with his abilities, Yuna explained cryptically. Yugao's eyes hardened, feeling the presence of Yamato behind her. She narrowed her eyes before managing a tiny nod, though she was sure that Yamato caught it anyway. It turns out that the priestess ran off. Naruto-sama had me bring Sakura back to the compound while he went to the other one. Sasuke, Sai, and Kakashi went ahead. I would assume that Naruto-sama went ahead having met up with Cheyenne as well. But that's not the most amazing information, Yuna said, suddenly stopping, and Yugao wanted her to continue, but everyone heard a painful groan come from a certain unconscious pink-haired medic Nin. Things were quickly put back into perspective with that. Tell me and Yamato inside. Did Naruto leave any specific instructions? Yugao asked, and Yuna raised an eyebrow. No, he only had me do this. He also told me to support you too since he felt that something bad was coming. Nothing more than that, Yuna answered. Yugao quickly steeled her eyes at that moment. Seems that something bad really was going to happen. Alright then, Yamato, take Sakura inside. Yuna and I will go over everything and I'll relay that information to you, Yugao said, and Yamato looked at her for a second. The two Umbu locked their eyes with each other and Yamato wasn't sure, but he felt something. Dare he say off regarding Yugao? There was something in her eyes. He didn't know what, but there was a latent amount of loyalty in her eyes. Now this wouldn't have bothered him in the slightest if this loyalty was to Konoha, but it wasn't. The words Yugao and traitor could never be in the same sentence with each other. For as long as Tenzo had known Nico, she had always had a rough line of loyalty. She never gave out loyalty easily. The only ones who could take it were the Hokage and a few of her superiors. One of which was Itachi before he turned traitor. She even only showed this much dying loyalty to one other person, Hay-8. What was this ominous feeling? Yamato would have to report this to the Hokage. Maybe he was just being paranoid, but as Yugao had said, paranoid is justified in our line of work. Yuna bore her eyes between the replacement sensei of what remained of the former Team 7 and one of her best friends of Heineken. There seemed to be some underlying tension here. It was like streaks of lightning were bashing violently between the two of them as one tried to overcome the other. Yuna had only ever felt such pressure one time, and that was when Naruto had been severely angered when Kazuma raised the dead within Konoha's walls. Something wrong, Yamato? Yugao asked neutrally. Yuna snapped herself out of her gaze, looking between the two, and Yamato's eyes slowly narrowed before a smile came to his face. It slowly went up further and further before the tension seemingly dissipated. No, there is nothing wrong, Yugao. I'll see you later, Yamato said, taking Sakura away. The deadly glare he sent forward would have scared anyone had they seen him. Yugao watched him leave while Yuna appeared at her side. What's with him? Yuna asked, and Yugao's seemingly dangerous stance ceased. I don't know, but we'll deal with it later, Yugao said, and Yuna nodded as she walked off, leaving Yugao on the dirt road. Yugao frowned as she looked down to the side of her waist to see her hand slowly inching its way for her sword. What was she about to do just then? With Sasuke, Sai, and Kakashi, Sasuke, Sai and Kakashi dropped down to the ground in front of the cave just beyond of the rendezvous compound. Kneeling to the ground, Sasuke placed his hands on the dirt and collected a few bits of it into his palm. There is highly concentrated chakra here, Sasuke said. Kakashi nodded, placing his hands on the walls. Ah, I feel it too. Something powerful is sealed here. It must be the demon's body that they told us about. If his spirit escaped the other temple, then it's easy to see why they might come here next. I wonder if Naruto found the priestess, Kakashi responded. Sasuke didn't offer a reaction to Kakashi's response. However, I wonder about those warriors back there. Both didn't think that their other companion would say something before they looked back at one of the stranger sights that they had seen. Just a bit off from where the compound was, there was a large spot of land where a few statues of stone warriors were situated. Sasuke didn't say anything, but he felt something off about them. There wasn't any chakra flowing through them, so maybe it was nothing, but he just felt like he couldn't leave it that way. He didn't know, maybe it was nothing. Sasuke wasn't sure, but ever since had left Orochimaru that time he felt something different. Since learning of the Uchiha massacre, Sasuke could tell that he was a little wary. He didn't know of what, but he hoped that he wouldn't find out. Leave them alone. They aren't a concern for us, Sasuke said. Sai turned to look at him strangely, but he didn't say anything to make it seem like he was questioning the supposed second-in-command for this mission. Though sometimes he wondered why a capable jonin like Kakashi wasn't leading. It seemed weird if Sai merely made his point clear, which he didn't. Walking into the cave, Sasuke, Sai, and Kakashi memorized the shape of the walls. It began with various curves and turns before they popped out the other side. Inside the cave was an enormous hole in the ground. This seems to be where the chakra is centered. Strange that it seems to be resonating like this, Sasuke said. Should we go down there? Sai asked. However, Sasuke shook his head. He didn't know what was down there, so he would rather not risk it at the moment. At least until they knew what they were dealing with. More than likely this was the sealing chamber if the various seals running across the wall were any indication. Unsheathing his sword, Sasuke quickly stabbed it at the ground. Sai and Kakashi eyed him for a little while before Sasuke narrowed his eyes. What do you guys see? Sasuke asked. Kakashi looked down and the sight surprised him. Sai looked down and he raised an eyebrow. Sasuke's sword didn't even pierce the earth where they stood. Given that Sasuke's sword was more than likely crafted from the same material as Orochimaru's blade, then it had some of the best metal to offer. The only thing it couldn't pierce was a blade capable of being its equal or something like that. The ground is so laced with concentrated chakra that even with your strength you can't pierce it, at least not without your other abilities. The same is most likely true for Sai and myself, Kakashi answered. Do you believe that the same would be for someone say our small dick squad leader? Sai asked with his fake smile. Sasuke and Kakashi turned to the pale-looking young teen, giving him a light glare. The only ones who got to insult Naruto, not mean it, and get away with it was them and vice versa. Both chose to ignore the question for now since it hadn't done anything short of irk them, if only slightly. Sai, be careful. Naruto is the leader of this mission and your comments can and will land you in subordination. Remember that, Kakashi responded. Sai's smile lessened as he would be sure to keep that in mind, but it's not like he truly cared about any of this. Hi, forgive me Kakashi Hatake-san. With how busy you are, I wonder if you still have time to visit your friends at the memorial stone, Sai instigated calmly. Kakashi didn't rise to the accusation, if only because he already had nothing to regret over. Both his teammates were alive, even if one of them was. Sai, be quiet. We're leaving. Sasuke said with a tone of finality. Kakashi and Sai nodded and the three walked away quickly. Something was wrong. Their run here had been too smooth. There was no sign of the enemy. What was going on here? With Naruto and Cheyenne, Naruto took a small breath as he landed on a tree branch. It sounds like they are all interesting people. Why would this Kamachi-san be so cold? Cheyenne asked. For the past hour, Naruto had been regaling her with tales of his family and his earlier adventures. That one's a little complicated. Kamachi-chan is weird like that, but that's just her, I guess. She was used by a guy that I despise, and so her memory is a little jumbled at the moment. Bachan has tried to get back what she could, but if she isn't careful then she could regain all her memories or lose them all in their entirety. She also tends to say, a lot. Must be her thing, Naruto explained. Cheyenne slowly nodded and smiled at the idea of her long, lost heritage. So the island is now like a mini country? Cheyenne asked and Naruto sighed. The outcome to having all of us leave Haku and Zabuza in charge. Technically yes, but it's all up in the air at the moment. Don't worry about those details, Naruto said, and Cheyenne just looked at him before sighing and shaking her head. She just slowly nodded before she felt Naruto's body shiver. Cheyenne, hold on, Naruto said suddenly. Before she could offer her asking of why, Naruto bolted through the trees with his unseen speed. Cheyenne gulped as she clutched his jacket while Naruto rushed through the forest. The male blonde cursed as his sensory capabilities told him of the person right behind him. He had been hoping that they would need more recovery time than that. Turns out that they didn't. Well, fuck. Katan, Hibashiri, came a loud shout and Naruto cursed as rushing flames devoured the trees behind him. Cheyenne widened her eyes in horror at the approaching flames before she heard Naruto's voice, it firm and chilling unlike the flames that continued to race towards them. Cheyenne, give me my sword, Naruto commanded. Now wasn't the time for luxuries and Cheyenne wasn't about to complain if her supposed family knew what he was doing. Taking the hilt of Naruto's sword, she drew it from its sheath and gave it to the blonde. Naruto quickly stopped and let Cheyenne onto a tree branch. He then turned around and closed his eyes. Taking his sword in both hands, Cheyenne gasped as the older blonde's steel was encased in a pure, white, hot flame. Naruto raised it overhead as the flames neared them. He then quickly slashed downward, burying his sword in the coming flames before the red flames dissipated into nothingness. Cheyenne widened her eyes to the sight while Naruto shivered. That use of Honshu still hurt. However, Naruto didn't have the time to focus on that before he felt the chakra signature of Jitai right behind him. Your priestess is really getting on my nerves with not being dead. That was a pretty cheap trick, but it will not happen again, Jitai said while Naruto smirked. Seems like you have a lot more to learn, but it shouldn't surprise you. We, Uzumaki, are natural-born tricksters, Naruto said with a grin. Jitai quickly frowned and his teeth seethed before he chuckled darkly. The dark aura coming from his body made Cheyenne gulp. Naruto and Cheyenne could feel the chakra rolling off his body like a cup that had been run over with water. This sense of foreboding was quickly increasing every time Naruto saw this. Jitai suddenly hunched over. Extra arms sprouted off the sides of his body. His skin turned dark and his hair turned more white and pale than before. I'll kill you both. Then I'll take the blonde to our master. You will die here, priestess, and so will your guard. Now that I am like this, there is no escape. He screeched and he suddenly vanished in a rush of wind, destroying the tree's branches behind him. Naruto just barely had the time to raise his sword and block before he and Jitai were sent crashing through the trees. Cheyenne braced against one of the trees while her hair thrashed in the breeze. Oni-sama. Cheyenne called out. Somehow, she managed to get to the ground and quickly darted off in her best speed, which wasn't as best as she would have liked, but at least she was moving. Meanwhile, Naruto and Jitai exited the trees and landed on the ground. Jitai's forearm was launched at Naruto's person before Naruto quickly countered with his sword. Pushing Jitai back, the young Uzumaki swirled his body across the ground for a sweep kick. Jitai saw the incoming strike and jumped over it. He swung his leg in the air for Naruto's face before he widened his eyes when his foot was caught by a Kage Bunshin. The Bunshin leapt over the real Naruto's backside and kicked Jitai in the chin, sending him flying back. "Tch, damn brat," Jitai said, sucking his teeth and slapping his hands together. "Doton, Tsuchi Kairo, Earth Release, Earth Corridor," Jitai shouted, slamming his hands on the ground. The earth quickly shot up all around Naruto and his clone before the two blondes smirk. "That's not going to work on me again," Naruto called out, and before Jitai could ask what he meant, he was surprised to see the Naruto clone hunch over and the real Naruto use his back as a stepping stone before launching himself into the air away from the earth-raising technique. "Ha! Now you're finished. You can't move so good in the air, can you?" Jitai asked and quickly swept through his hand signs one more time. Naruto quickly gripped his sword and pulled it back, letting the seals across it surge in power. "Katan, Hibashiri," Jitai shouted, spewing another set of roaring flames for Naruto's form. Naruto took notice of the incoming flames before frowning lips and narrowing his eyes. The seals glowed bright before Naruto swung his sword. Yuzu no Fukushu, Dai Uzumaki Ikari, Whirlpool Revenge, Great Maelstrom Rage, Naruto hollered swinging his sword. Jitai watched in surprise as water sprayed from Naruto's sword before quickly shaping into the form of missiles as they each converged on the coming flames. The water and fire bashed into each other as Naruto landed on the ground, the air already began to fill with steam. Jitai's form disappeared from his view. Naruto took a deep breath before closing his eyes. It was quiet. A little too quiet. Naruto knew that Jitai was here and that he was stalking him. The only question was if the prey would escape before the predator came out. It was simple enough in nature. Naruto suddenly turned his head to the right in a hurry and in a small state of surprise, swung his sword through the steam. It was only then that he saw light blonde hair. Cursing greatly, Naruto reined in his sense just in time as Cheyenne quickly appeared next to him only for her to freeze with his sword at her throat. "Oni-sama, are you okay?" Cheyenne asked, not feeling the slightest winded after her run. "I'm fine, but you shouldn't be here," Naruto said quickly, taking a look around. Cheyenne looked at her alert family member before frowning. "I am also an Uzumaki. I won't let you get hurt. You still have to keep your promise to me. Until then, you will not disappear on me," Cheyenne answered. Naruto turned to stare at her sternly, but Cheyenne returned the glare quickly and effectively. The two Uzumaki bore their eyes to each other. If Cheyenne were honest, then being subjected to Naruto's intense stare was just a little unnerving, but she didn't move at all. Finally, Naruto sighed and rubbed the top of his head. "You're just like Ka-chan, I swear. Fine, just stick close to me. Like it or not, I'm not entirely at my best at the moment, so I want you to sense him for me. Can you do that?" Naruto asked. Cheyenne blinked before quickly nodding. Cheyenne stood behind Naruto while the blonde held his Uzumaki stance. In that time, Cheyenne closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Focusing her chakra, she felt the blue energy of the trees and the grass. She felt a few other things and they all seemed to have just a small, constant flow. Finally, she felt a very disturbed amount of chakra rapidly heading for their location. "Oni-sama, to the right." Cheyenne spoke. Naruto's head shifted to the right quickly and his body followed. Naruto swung his sword and watched it clash with a kunai. Jitai appeared out of the steam while Naruto frowned. "You're both dead," he said, but Naruto wasn't about to let that come to pass. Jitai quickly launched his foot for Naruto's side. Cheyenne stumbled a ways away, allowing Naruto to quickly intercept. The whiskered shinobi growled and then twisted his body, moving Naruto through Jitai's swift punches with minimum difficulty. "You talk too much. You're not going to take Cheyenne-chan," Naruto announced. Jitai snarled before he noticed Naruto take his sword back. He brought it around his back before focusing the remains of his honshu. "Futon, Detappa," Naruto called out, swinging his sword, sending a fierce wind blowing the smoke away. Jitai widened his eyes before shielding his body from a large part of the jutsu. It literally blew him back just a couple of feet before he finally landed, however. Jitai widened his eyes, only being able to take the steam in at the moment before it dissipated. He looked at the blurry forms of Naruto and Cheyenne before the former vanished out of view. Jitai widened his eyes before a loud scream came from his voice. Jitai felt his entire being on fire, it literally burning with agony as he slumped to the ground. Once he did, he took notice of Naruto directly under him to the side, his sword extended. In the air swung the left side of his arm. He watched it go through the air before landing on the ground. The red fluid known as blood seeped from his arm before he grabbed it and clutched it painfully. "You let your guard down, team," Naruto said before Jitai's painful screeching turned into chuckling and then laughter, then full-blown insane cackles. "Morio-sama, I will kill him. I do not care." He shouted, and Naruto felt his chakra pulse dangerously before Jitai held up a hand sign. Naruto could literally feel the massive amount of chakra swelling up in his body. Behind him, Cheyenne widened her eyes as she felt the same chakra that Naruto felt. She suddenly grew fearful. All that chakra that sprang forward was intoxicating, and not in the good way. Katan, Karyu Enden, Jitai shouted, spewing out a massive wall of flames over the fields directly for Naruto's location. Naruto quickly raised his sword into the air before a sharp pain came from his right arm. The seal on his right arm burned before he dropped to the ground. Kyuso, Naruto said to himself before he jumped into the air away from the coursing flames. Jitai growled while Naruto smirked. Missed team, Naruto said with a grin before he noticed Jitai's shock turn into a grin as well. Or did I? He asked, and Naruto widened his eyes in horror before looking back to see the flames rushing for a surprise Cheyenne. She merely stood watching the incoming flames, her legs paralyzed with fear as her body shivered uncontrollably. Naruto gasped before landing on the ground. With a quick turn of his foot, Naruto disappeared with a burst of sudden wind, easily leaving a footprint on the dirt. Cheyenne! Naruto cried as he appeared next to her. Onia-sama! Cheyenne shouted, turning next to Naruto. Naruto quickly grabbed Cheyenne and embraced her into a tight hug as the flames washed over their beings and ushering in the sound of a thunderous explosion across the flames. The flames and smoke settled high into the sky while Jitai watched the play unfold with a maniac grin on his face. Looking up at the sky, Jitai cackled and outstretched his free hand to the heavens above. Morio-sama, I did it. I killed the brat and the priestess. I win. He hollered with all his might to anyone who heard him. If they did hear him, then they would have easily mistaken him for an escaped asylum patient, but none of that mattered to Jitai. He had won. He didn't need to care anymore. However, slowly Jitai turned back to see the inside of the flames explode violently. A large ping rang through the forest. The spirits of the land of demons widened their eyes as the flames quickly turned white. All flew down until they were on their knees and bowed, keep their ethereal heads close to the physical earth. Far off, the Shinigami narrowed his eyes greatly. He turned his eyes back in the location that his only summoner was in before a grave sense of dread filled his face. He could feel his powers being forcefully taken. It wasn't possible. There was no way that this could come to pass. Had Naruto truly acquired so much Honshu that it turned into this? Had Kushina actually not been able to siphon off his power fast enough that this wasn't preventable? No matter how the Shinigami felt, this could either be very good or very bad. However, Shin couldn't stop the light glare and smile on his face. Things had truly turned interesting. Far off in Suna, Gaara groaned. Quickly sweat dripped from his face to his desk before he fell to the ground in pain. The sand in his gourd swayed around dangerously while Gaara clutched his head in pain. Naruto, what did is this power? What's happened to you? Gaara asked in his thoughts. Whatever was happening, he hoped that it stopped soon. Back in Konoha, Hinako and Hizashi also groaned as they fell where they were. Side branch members and main branch members quickly gathered around the two before quickly running off to go and inform Hayashi and the Hokage about this latest development. It looked like it was getting very bad if given the way that the two seemed to be seething in pain. Shikio-sama, they said in their thoughts. They hoped that this would pass. In Uzushio, nearly everyone was surprised as Kushina, Rin, Haku, Zabuza, Mikoto, and Itachi fell to the ground. Oi, what the hell happened? What's wrong with you guys? Suigetsu shouted before Kamachi came running through the main compound with Yukimaru, Fuka and Guren. Someone get them some water. Guren shouted, quickly taking over everything at that point. Everyone glanced to each other before racing off throughout the compound. You're going to be alright, Kushina Abakan. Who's going to be my rival for Nichan if you're gone? Yuri asked. Kushina panted heavily while the seals on her body burned. Underneath her attire they burned with a type of heat that she had felt similar to the time that her son had been in Sunagakure at the time. Sochi, Kushina thought to herself while the others had their own thoughts as well. In the land of demons, Yugao wanted to curse whatever god was making fun of them at the moment as everyone panicked once Yuna dropped to the ground in agony. Yugao quickly took control of everyone and ordered the medics to quickly begin working with Yuna to help her to get back on her feet, but deep down Yugao could feel that this was something else entirely and that something else had to do with her blonde teammate. Meanwhile, Jitai widened his eyes as the ground beneath the fire cracked and cackled. Its massive wall of white flames still hot to the human touch if one did touch them. Jitai, somehow through his pain, stood to his feet in shock before he felt the sensation of death on his being. He could literally see the Shinigami forcefully ripping out his soul with what looked like the form of a sword. The transformed human didn't know what kind of Ki this was, but it was easy to say that this was otherworldly. Jitai actually found it painful to stand on his feet, the sweat dripping down from the sides of his face to his chin. What is this? Where is this pressure coming from? This chakra isn't human. He said to himself before he felt his attention drawn to the white fire. Inside of that fire, he noticed two figures. Both should have been incinerated by his flames, but they stood just fine. The first was male holding his sword into the air, the sword glowing brightly as he did so. Meanwhile the female laid out unconscious on the ground, however that wasn't what was surprising to Jitai. No, what was the most surprising was the blonde hair, but also the single horn that came from the side of his face. In death, there is life. In life, there is death. I will become the bridge that ferries you to the land of the dead. You will die, Naruto said, turning his body around. Jitai gulped as he watched Naruto standing in the flames before the blonde quickly vanished out of sight. Jitai widened his eyes as the white flames instantly died down. He then felt a hand on his shoulder. Slowly turning his head, the follower of Morio gawked when he saw Naruto's face, however he was different. Half of the blonde's face was his own, and the other half was covered by a mask. The horn that Jitai saw belonged to half of the mask with its steely eyes, ferocious jagged teeth and crafted mouth. Naruto cracked half a grin and smirked. Fall into death, he said and held his sword into the air. Jitai had to run. He couldn't stay here. Not with this. If he stayed here then he would. Jitai jumped to his feet and quickly launched his unsevered fist at Naruto's face. The blonde merely watched the punch coming for him before he brought his sword down. Jitai's fist bashed into the metal of Naruto's sword, forcefully expelling white flames from the metal that he held. Cursing, Jitai swerved his body across the ground, letting one of his legs glide to Naruto's side. The half-masked blonde grinned widely before he swiftly jumped into the air. Jitai's foot swung beneath the blonde's body as Naruto sucked in his legs. Damn him! He's messing with me, Jitai said before jumping back as Naruto landed on the ground. However, just as Naruto landed, Jitai found that he was gone. Moving his eyes left, right, up and down, he found no sight of Naruto before a hand grabbed his shoulder. He turned and noticed Naruto cackling madly with his sword poised for Jitai's throat. Naruto swung the blade for Jitai's throat and the follower of Morio lowered his head out of fear. It turned out to be beneficial as a burst of Honshu expelled from Naruto's sword over the grass, somehow making sure not to burn the land as it happened. Jitai then rose up and brought his fist back. He then tensed, sending his fist crashing into the half-masked Naruto, landing him in the face before sending him flying back. Naruto's body flew through the air before he crashed into the ground with a loud thud. Hee, your speed isn't so impressive now that my eyes have gotten used to it. I can't believe that I was also afraid of you. Morio-sama's power flows through my veins. So you severed my arm? I don't need it to kill you, brat. Jitai shouted with a large laugh. However, that laugh didn't stay long before he heard a separate laugh. He looked over to Naruto's body and he watched in amazement as the blonde stood to his feet, his strange mask no even dented from Jitai's assault. Naruto's laugh continued for a little while before it finally stopped and he stood silent. The wind blew in the grass before he watched Naruto raise his sword into the air, his eyes as cold as ice as he did so. Jitai watched the sword become coated in white flames and suddenly his legs stiffened. The mask was slowly becoming complete. The lower half was made in proportion to the opposite half, revealing the jagged teeth that the mask possessed. Jitai took an unconscious step back. Naruto looked ready to move and Jitai found himself before he dashed off in his best speed. He ran across the field leaving Naruto and the unconscious priestess Cheyenne behind. Naruto watched him leave, but his eyes never left his form as he did. He kept his sword raised in the air. Jitai's feet became a blur across the plains. What the fuck is with that brat? He wondered until his eyes picked up on movement. He looked to his left and he instantly noticed a blonde flash next to him. With a sharp turn the blur appeared in front of him, halting his movement. In front of him appeared Naruto with his half-masked face. The Shinigami-like mask looked even more intimidating than before as Jitai skidded to a stop. To run from death is impossible. Your soul will be sent to the world of the dead to roam in agony for eternity. For I am the Shinigami summoner and with our contract I will end you, Naruto said holding his sword up again. Jitai sent a punch for Naruto's face in frustration of the blonde's words, but Naruto easily anticipated it. His once blue azure eyes now turned silver-white glared slowly behind the half-mask on his face. The fist from Jitai slowly neared him before he mouthed his words. Kokunyugami no Jutsu, Naruto said and time instantly stopped. Naruto felt no pain and he didn't contemplate why this was so. He just felt great at the moment and that was all that mattered. Jitai's fist stopped right in front of his face and Naruto held his sword into the air. You will not be given the chance for last words. Face death and find solace in the stomach of the Shinigami, Naruto said before twisting his body and holding his sword back. He plunged it right through Jitai's chest, allowing for time to resume. Before Jitai could ever register anything, he dropped to the ground as Naruto yanked his soul from his body. His sword slowly engulfed the soul until there was nothing anymore. Jitai lay dead at Naruto's feet. The wind flowed through the plains before Naruto dropped his sword. It fell to the grass while the silver in Naruto's eyes died down. The half of the Shinigami mask dropped from his face, breaking into piece of Honshu before dissipating as he fell to his knees. He then arched forward and bashed his face into the ground, completely unconscious. From far off in the trees, Kusuna widened his eyes as he fell back and landed on his behind. He swallowed the tough pill in his throat. What was that? Is this really Konoha Shinobi? Jitai, you fool. Who told you to leave the cavern? Now we're one short. Kusuna said before sighing. Well, at least the Uzumaki is far away from the priestess. Now I will not make the same mistake again. Kusuna said. He took a kunai from his pouch with a small grin on his face before he felt the familiar feeling of steel on his throat. Turning around, Kusuna widened his eyes when he saw a man in an animal mask. He cackled strangely, but didn't speak for a moment. You come with me. Let's go somewhere and talk. Oh, don't worry about your little demon god or whatever you worship. You won't need him where you're going, he said, and Kusuna quickly opened his mouth to retort before he was slammed in the stomach with unrivaled force. Kusuna quickly did a double take before falling unconscious and hunching over the person's shoulder. Even with one arm you're probably still useful to me. If I'm not mistaken, there was a mask like that back in the Uzumaki shrine. TCH, not like I can go back there now. Who knows who's going to find me? Well, whatever. Events are moving faster than I could have ever anticipated. Truly, the Uzumaki clan showcases its resolve. That clan never could stay down for long. When I read the report that Uzumaki Naruto nearly died only to have been saved through extraordinary means, I never fathomed something like this. Obito. I wonder what will happen when your destiny clashes with Naruto's. You can't run like this forever, the figure said before he grabbed the fallen Kusuna and vanished into the trees and the leaves only just in time to see a large bird coming into view from the horizon. Elsewhere, Oi Setsuna, where is Jitai? The plan is commencing tonight. Shizuku called, and the third male of the gang of four quickly turned his head, hoping to put a stop to his teammate irate rampage. Though working with the woman for so long, then it was easy to see that such wasn't as possible as he would have liked. Calm down, Shizuku. Kusuna went after him. Jitai disappeared and Yomi-sama ordered Kusuna to go after him. They should be back soon, Setsuna spoke, and Shizuku quickly snorted before folding her arms, but it was easy to see that she had accepted the answer from him for now. Though he could tell from her features that she really didn't like it. However, soon all conversations or lack thereof were ceased when the two followers noticed Yomi step out of the darkness. Both quickly knelt down, but they noticed dark chakra flow through the walls of the cave, it shrouding everything in its grasp as Shizuku and Setsuna shivered immensely from the pressure this darkness held. Unlike that blonde guy's power which seemed to bask anyone in its warmth, white glow, this one seemed to drown anyone in an endless sea of hopelessness and despair. The Morio-possessed Yomi stepped forward before he gave a semi-wide grin. Stand up. Both of you. He commanded, and the two quickly stood to their feet without a single complaint. The two seemed confused once they looked into his dark, soulless eyes, but they decided not to comment on it. They trusted that their leader knew what he was doing. Tonight is the time. For centuries I have been stuck, but now I will be free. I will bathe this world in a baptism of fire that it has never seen before. Devouring the priestess and her Uzumaki charge is a trifling matter now. We will release my body and I will resurrect my 1,000-year kingdom, he spoke. The two shuddered underneath his powerful tone, but Shizuku didn't say anything. However, Setsuna did. Yomi-sama, what of Jitai and Kusuna? Will we leave them behind to catch up with us? Setsuna asked, causing Morio to glare towards him. He could see the insignificant mortals who would no doubt be dead to his cause in any later processes, but for now he would indulge them if only slightly. Leave them behind. The spirit of the mortal Jitai has passed from this plane of existence, therefore he is useless to me. As for the one known as Kusuna, he will be elsewhere. Do not worry over insignificant things, Morio spoke, and Setsuna nodded quickly with a slight bow. Both didn't understand this reasoning, but they knew better than to question their leader. They truly did not want to be the ones who suffered his wrath like the thousands, if not millions, of people who would very soon. Seeing that he had their obedience in this matter, Morio dragged Yomi's possessed body and walked out of the cave and into the outside to see the setting sun. The sun almost disappeared over the mountain top before Morio offered the smallest of grins. I can feel them, my army. They are right where I was sealed. You will take us there immediately, Morio spoke to Yomi, and the man quickly nodded inwardly, though outwardly his head didn't move the slightest bit. Setsuna, Shizuku, I want no help for the priestess. Take my power and annihilate her compound. Destroy everyone and everything. Every last man, woman, or child will die in that compound in your sea of flames. You will do it, right? Yomi asked as Morio had allowed the man just the slightest bit of control to utter those words. Shizuku and Setsuna glanced to each other and then back to Yomi and then back to each other again. Hi Yomi-sama. They said. Setsuna and Shizuku both sported small smiles on their faces as they did so. This would be the night. The night to release the ghost army. It was the best night that any other demon could hope for. With Naruto and Cheyenne, Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes. He felt like he had the most splitting headache than he had ever had before. This one just trumped all the others. He remembered grabbing Cheyenne into a tight hug, but after that he drew a large blank. "Kyubi, what happened?" Naruto asked. The Kyubi no Yoko cracked open one eye and snorted. "That's my line, brat. Whatever you did, you killed that pathetic ninjen who attacked not long ago, but how you did it I don't know. All I know is that you experienced something very similar with chakra overload. I don't know what to tell you. The seal on this damn cage experienced it too. It knocked the both of us out. I just woke up a few minutes before you. Unfortunately, I can't run damage control on your body, mostly because there is nothing physically wrong with you. My chakra wouldn't know what to do with itself if it went around your body. Anyway, the only thing I can do is lessen your pain by keeping a constant rush of adrenaline in your bloodstream, however even that will wear off soon," Kyubi said, and Naruto widened his eyes in sudden realization. "Cheyenne," he shouted mentally, however his body didn't share in his enthusiasm to try and rise from the bed. "Calm down, Kit. The Uzumaki priestess is right next to you," Kyubi said, and Naruto craned his neck to see Cheyenne resting easily next to him on her side. Relief came to Naruto's face until he heard the door open. "You look like you've seen worse days, loser." Naruto couldn't resist the urge to chuckle before looking up to see Sasuke looking at him from the door right with Kakashi and Sai. "How long have I been out?" Naruto asked. "A few hours, more or less. It's almost night time. We felt that surge you unleashed, so we came flying over here because of Sai. You mind telling us what that was all about?" Sasuke asked. Kakashi closed the door after letting Sai into the room as well. "Cheyenne and I were attacked by Jitai. It took a little more than I thought, and I guess I lost control for a second, and the result would be this," Naruto said sheepishly. Sasuke shook his head while Kakashi's eye turned up into a smile. Sai didn't show a real emotion, so no one truly minded. "So he's dead?" Sasuke asked, and Naruto slowly nodded his head. Everyone seemed to relax, if only slightly. That was one thing out of the way that they didn't need to worry about. "You don't seem particularly happy about that, Naruto-san. Why is that?" Sai asked. Naruto turned to offer a small, tired glare, but it didn't exactly stand because Naruto was willing to admit that Sai was right. He didn't recall the things that happened that possibly made Jitai lose his life, so he didn't know what to say. "I'm just tired, Sai." "Where are we, Sasuke?" Naruto asked, and Sasuke looked out of the window of the house they were in. "We're in the compound where the body is located. However, I feel something off. I'm sure that you can feel it too," Sasuke said, and Naruto quickly nodded, though not being able to move at the moment then it was a little irritating. "Yeah, I feel it. Not in so much, but in the little that is present at the moment." "Let me guess, you guys went into the cavern?" Naruto asked, and Sasuke quickly nodded. Naruto closed his eyes for a second and decided not to reprimand them this time, if only because he knew that he would have done the same thing if he were in their shoes. Silence ensued for a bit, and Sasuke took that opportunity as the time to explain. "The ground of that sealing chamber is tough. Without the use of chakra or elemental affinities, it isn't going to have a normal scratch in it, which will lead me to think that this was easily designed by those who came even before Cheyenne's parents. I don't think I have to tell you that this is most likely something to do with Fuinjutsu, though of what type I don't know," Sasuke answered. Naruto glared up at the ceiling, the scene with Jitai still playing around in his mind, before he decided to put it to the side for now. He could hear faint chuckling in the recesses of his mind, and he knew for sure that it wasn't Kyubi. Given that Cheyenne-san's Uzumaki bloodline heritage, then it might not be so far-fetched to think that other priestesses had done something to the room before, Kakashi theorized. Naruto didn't move, but if he could, then he would have cupped his chin in thought with one of his hands. "Perhaps it is best if we merely have Cheyenne-san seal the demon now rather than later. It will jeopardize the mission anymore if she doesn't," Sai said, and Naruto turned somewhat painfully to see Saiyan's rising and falling chest. Naruto couldn't fault Sai's words, but all the same he wished that the pale teen had worded them better. Everyone tensed for a second as they watched Cheyenne squirm. The priestess slowly opened her eyes and leaned up. She seemed fine before taking a look to the left. "Onia-sama!" she exclaimed. Everyone watched as Cheyenne kicked off the covers and swiftly appeared next to Naruto's side. "Onia-sama, are you alright?" Cheyenne asked, and Naruto chuckled. He could tell that if this was any other situation then he would be looking very vulnerable at the moment. It was sort of a surprise to see so much worry in the previously cold priestess, but it was still a welcome change. "I'll live, Cheyenne-chan," Naruto uttered with a small grin. Cheyenne let out a small melodious chuckle from her lips before leaning back and sighing. "Onia-sama, what happened? I remember that fire was rushing towards us. For once in my life I was truly afraid to die, but I felt somewhat at peace that you were with me. I passed out, so I don't remember much. The last thing I remember was the feeling of calm, soothing, warm white fire before I became unconscious," Cheyenne said, and she watched everyone tense, well except for Sai, but he was a case on his own. "Apparently we're trying to figure that out. So far we believe that Naruto defeated Jitai, however it's puzzling that even he doesn't know how he did it," the one-eyed Heineken member spoke with his back against the wall. Sasuke seemed to be having thoughts of his own while Cheyenne placed a hand on Naruto's arm. No one said anything for a while, prompting Sasuke to seek his own question. "What did you feel during that time?" Sasuke asked, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. He turned to the second in command of this mission before sighing. "What are you getting at?" Naruto asked. Sasuke stared back at him evenly before turning his head to look out the window. "The power I felt at that time was very different, but I'm sure the way of activation is the same as the time that we fought in the Valley of the End." "Right before you used that chakra," Sasuke answered, making Naruto frown. Kakashi did the same very quickly, glancing over to the young blonde. Sai kept the creepy smile on his face, but his thoughts belied the calm face that he held. Cheyenne looked at everyone curiously. She didn't know what they were talking about, but she just figured that it was shinobi stuff. "Whether you know it or not, loser, you, either consciously or unconsciously, release power to survive when the situation seems hopeless. You manage to do something no one else can do when you're in true danger of losing your life or someone else losing their life. Ever since I found out about the Kyuubi, I had a reason to believe that while it was using your anger to draw out power, it was also a reflex of survival for both you and the fox. I believe this is what happened now, only you didn't know what caused it," Sasuke explained. Everyone glanced to him and Naruto leaned back. "Much as I loathe agreeing with a damnable Uchiha, the boy is correct. One of the many reasons why I lent you power was to survive for myself. Whether he's right in that little theory of his, but something happened to us. I don't know what you did, but now 7 of my tails are white. They are white. This thing spreads like a disease." Kyuubi hollered before Naruto cut the connection with an internal sigh. "Naruto, what did you feel that time?" Kakashi asked this time. It was the same question Sasuke asked moments ago, but only now did Naruto know what this was all being based from. Glancing to Cheyenne, who was looking down at his arm for some reason, he finally spoke. "I felt frustration for how things planned out, anger for him endangering Cheyenne, and a large sense of dread when Cheyenne-chan joined the fight. When those flames rushed for me, I grabbed Cheyenne into my arms. Nothing else mattered except that she live. It was after that I passed out," Naruto said. Cheyenne trembled from those words, and though she wanted to actually hit her cousin for being that foolish, she couldn't help but find it endearing. Kakashi and Sasuke glanced to each other and slowly nodded to each other. Sai didn't miss that, but it's not like they were being discreet about it. "Ma, if that's all, then there's nothing we can do about it now. It's over, so we can finally get on with our business. Naruto, Cheyenne, do you know where you are? Kakashi asked. Both Naruto and Cheyenne shook their heads, so Sai decided to tell them. We are at the next compound where the demon's body is. Please seal it so that our mission may be a success, Sai said, and Cheyenne's smile quickly flew downward into a frown. Naruto noticed her shoulders seem strangely heavy as they slumped forward. I understand, she said, standing to her feet. Cheyenne wobbled slightly, but finally stood up straight. She shook her head slightly before walking out of the room. Naruto tried to lean up, but only groaned as his head hit the pillow of his futon. Don't try it, loser. You're not going anywhere in your condition, Sasuke said as he quickly left the room with a smirk. Kakashi gave an eye smile before he stood next to Naruto's form. He looked down at the blonde and Naruto glared at him, but neither said anything. Looks like you were useless after all, Naruto-san, just like your dick, Sai said, smiling before he left as well. Naruto's eyebrow twitched while Kyuubi snorted. Kakashi's sweat dropped before sighing. Rest, Naruto. We'll take care of things now, Kakashi said. Naruto didn't say anything and turned his head to look away in response. Kakashi just chuckled before he grabbed Naruto's sword from the wall and then placed it by the blonde's side at his bed. Naruto didn't see Kakashi leave, but he knew that if he could see his face then there would be the biggest grin right now. You're acting childish again, Kyuubi said, watching Naruto pout. You're so lucky I can't move right now, Naruto spoke before slowly closing his eyes. Naruto groaned his hardest as he stretched his fingers. His efforts were rewarded quickly as his right hand clenched into a fist. Naruto grinned slightly. With Cheyenne exiting the house, Cheyenne's sandals stepped on the hard ground. She looked out across the ground to see the plains barren. Trees surrounded them all like a circle or something like that. Cheyenne took a deep breath before sighing. Oni-sama, if you can live then this will not be such a big deal, Cheyenne said to herself before she walked towards the cave. Sasuke, Sai, and Kakashi exited the house to follow after Cheyenne. You really think it was right to leave him behind? Sasuke asked while Kakashi smiled. Without a doubt he is going to be angry at all three of us when this is over, but he does need his rest, Kakashi said. Sasuke nodded in return. Sai merely continued smiling as the trio followed after Cheyenne. The priestess tried not to let the stone statues disturb her all that much, but the fact of the matter was that they did, and she really couldn't place her finger on it, but she could feel that something was wrong, deathly wrong. Cheyenne's compound. Yugao and Yamato were running rapidly through the compound. The shouts and scream of people all around them were heard in their ears. Yuna was off somewhere else having a matter tended to by Yugao. However, Yugao now wished that she didn't send Yuna away. In her eyes, she could see the orange flames threatening to engulf the compound like an inferno. It was getting hot, very hot. Tenzo, find the remaining people. Get them out of here. Yugao shouted urgently. Tenzo, otherwise known as Yamato, frowned before looking forward. He saw someone looking at them both with a malicious grin. It was obvious that whoever this was that they were involved and they were leaking Ki easily. You expect to just stay here yourself? He asked calmly yet firmly. He wasn't about to leave Nico behind to fend for herself, but he could see her hands touch the hilt of her sword. Don't argue with me. I said go. Yugao called back. Yamato didn't flinch from her voice, for it was understandable at the very least, but he was still taken aback with it. He had never known Yugao to have a heated look so easily. She was always more of the laid-back type, but always willing to push herself. Her spending time away from the Umbu looked like it did her an entire world of good. You're not going to die on me, are you? Yamato asked, and Yugao gave a small smirk. Now I couldn't do that. As much as I gravely miss him, I am not ready to join Heiei just yet, Yugao said, taking her sword from its sheath. The steel flared into the sky as she took her kenjutsu stance. Now leave. I'll take care of things here, Yugao said, and Yamato finally sighed before he finally nodded. He quickly hopped away across the rooftops, but his eyes turned back to Yugao's form. As he dashed away, she got smaller and smaller, but he hoped that she would be fine on her own. Watching her subordinate leave, Yugao gave a sigh of relief. You think you saved him, but you didn't. You're only wasting your time. Submit to the will of Morio-sama, uttered a feminine voice. Yugao watched the figure come into appearance. Tightening her grip over her sword, Yugao snorted as the woman came into view. I do not care to follow the will of a demon. However, I can promise that I will give you my sword's will, Yugao spoke, and she watched Shizuku cackle lightly. I don't care about that cheap hunk of metal. Once Morio-sama is released, then you will understand your place in his kingdom. Your sword is nothing before him. Shizuku defended vehemently. Yugao wasn't so easily fazed. I had recently gone to our island's blacksmithing shop. When Hayate died, I took his sword, but it wasn't enough. No matter how I used it, I never felt that it was strong enough. I had a dream where it broke into thousands of pieces from the tip to the handle. I could do nothing as my opponent plunged their weapon into my chest over and over while laughing at my misery, Yugao spoke. The smile on Shizuku's face slowly began to fall as Yugao's blade to glow in a wonderful white light. Yugao took a deep breath and continued speaking. Yugao opened the door to the shop and walked inside. Taking a glance at all the weapons on the wall, she marveled at the skill of their craftsmanship as well as their creativity. Some of the weapons went into curves that she didn't know could be found for a blade. It all the more steeled her resolve to do this as she walked up to the counter. Hello? Yugao called out. She didn't get a response. Blinking to herself, Yugao sighed before clearing her throat. Hello. Yugao spoke more clearly and loudly. She saw a door burst open in the corner with bouts of black smoke coming from the door. She watched in mild surprise as a man and woman came out of the room coughing and hacking. Think we used too much powder? He asked while she quickly nodded her head. Both took time to collect themselves before they noticed Yugao looking at them both. The woman was merely middle-aged. She had short brown hair, some clothes, and a dark, dirty apron. Same for the man, only this guy had beady eyes of some sort. Yugao didn't delve deeply into it. How might we help you? The woman asked, coughing slightly. The man did the same and Yugao raised an eyebrow as they made their way over to the counter. Ever since Haku had, albeit unwarrantedly, allowed people to build houses on the island, Yugao still had to wonder how it was that business never seemed to settle down. It was always flourishing here. This was something she never understood. It's my sword, Yugao said, deciding to get to the point. She placed it on the table, getting the couple to look at it strangely. The man unsheathed it, revealing the shiny metal inside. There wasn't a single flaw with it that he could see. Both turned back to see Yugao with saddened eyes. I gave them my request. I told them everything that I wanted. I said that it's not the sword, it's the user. I wanted a sword that responded more to my feelings than I ever imagined possible. It took weeks, but they did it. I asked Naruto and Kushina to help me with the seals, which both did without a complaint of question of why. I still don't understand, but know I do. They trust me. They trusted that I knew what I was doing. It was a very hard pain, but I have it. Hey 8, please watch me. I want to do something for my team. I will show them all. Yugao raised her sword into the air and closed her eyes. Ha! You think that sword will help you? Not on your life. Shizuku shouted venomously. She quickly slapped her hands together and weaved through her hand signs while Yugao continued to hold her sword in the air. Shizuku watched as the sword sent out a rather loud ping through the compound before she finished her hand signs. Yugao sighed and her eyes blinked. Do you know how to forge one weapon from others? Yugao asked. The couple looked at each other in confusion before seeing the look on the purple-haired woman's face. The art of merging weapons has been lost to the ages, miss. We aren't sure what you require of us, but we think that you won't be able to find it here, the man said, and Yugao quickly bit her lower lip. She quickly took a step back to observe the couple in front of her eyes. You're lying. I know it. I have been trained to detect lies, Yugao said, surprising the two before they slowly narrowed their eyes at her. We want to cause trouble for us? If you don't, then we suggest you leave. It was the woman who spoke this time with edge in her voice. The husband seemed to discreetly be moving for a weapon before both paused when Yugao slumped her shoulders. Please, Yugao said, effectively swallowing whatever pride she had as a swordswoman and kenjutsu user. The man and woman stalled for a second before looking towards her. Yugao sighed, and she could already feel the growing headache of the day taking its toll on her. I did not come here for trouble, I just want to know what I have to offer to my team. Kushina Taishu is our leader, she's our most skilled kenjutsu user. Then there is Naruto-kun, his sword is unique. It's like a true sword that can pierce death somehow, Yugao said, just letting a small bit of information go to describe how Naruto's sword seemed to her. She hoped she didn't give away too much, but judging from the look on the couple's face, she hadn't. Yugao continued. Uchiha Sasuke's sword was crafted in the same manner as Orochimaru of the Sannin's blade. I don't want to admit it, but it's one of the finest sword fit for him. Then there is Kakashi Hatake-senpai. His sword was given to him by his father, the White Fang of Konoha. Lastly there is Mikoto Uchiha-san, her sword is of historical importance and yet it grants her a lot of strength. It can turn fire to her will. If she wants. I just wonder what I have. I don't have special abilities or a sword like that. I don't want to say I'm jealous, but I wonder where my place is, Yugao finished. The couple bore their eyes forward without a word. They didn't seem to dismiss her, so Yugao stayed for a bit. It seemed to be a very long while that anything happened, and Yugao heard the man sigh. He reached forward and grabbed Yugao's sword. He then unsheathed it and glared at its shiny exterior. He marveled at its design, its razor-sharp edge and its firm handle. Truly it was a great sword. However, it was forged to be just that, just to be a sword. There were no underlying qualities about it that he could see. He finally sighed and then sheathed it back. Any experienced sword user knows that it's not the weapon, but the user who wields it, correct? He asked suddenly. His wife suddenly smiled and Yugao slowly nodded. However, that is entirely too selfish for my taste. He exclaimed, and Yugao blinked, taken back by his sudden aggression. His eyes flared at that time, but now they softened as he gazed to the woman in front of him. The relationship between a sword and its user is a partnership. The sword will do as its user wants if the user trusts in the sword's ability, and the sword will come to acknowledge the user, bringing forth untold potential. Your sword cares for you very much, he said with a small smile. Yugao just allowed him to talk, though she didn't know what he meant when he said that. It was a little strange, but she didn't seem to mind. Does that mean you'll do it? Yugao asked. His wife smiled quickly while the man laughed in an uproar. Damn right I will. I, Takashi Kid, will take this challenge. Let's find out how special you and your sword can be. He said while Yugao brightened up with a wide smile. Katon, Hibashiri, Shizuku shouted, blowing a fierce flame in Yugao's direction. Yugao watched the incoming flames with little more than a simple stare. In seconds the flames would engulf her and her body, which was something Shizuku earnestly wanted to see. She grinned widely as the flames appeared before Yugao. Finally, Yugao sighed and swung her sword. Break and shatter, Yugao spoke and swung her sword down. The blade crashed into the flames and Shizuku watched in shock as the flames got smaller and smaller. In moments the flames disappeared in their entirety. Yugao stood perfectly fine while she looked at the stunned face of her target. What? Shizuku cried out before see Yugao bring her sword back. You can have it back. Katan, Hibashiri. Yugao shouted, but what Shizuku wasn't expecting was for Yugao to swing her sword into a wide arch. Instantly her opponent noticed flames pour from the sword in the same fashion that she had sent them. They scorched the ground as they raced for Shizuku's location. Shit, Shizuku said before she jumped into the air. She watched the flames pass under her feet as she blew a sigh of relief. However, she saw a figure shadow her view and looked up to see Yugao overhead. Shizuku quickly took out a kunai as Yugao brought her sword down. The steels clashed against each other before they two quickly went into a taijutsu battle. Yugao blocked a heavy kick from Shizuku while Shizuku dodged a punch to the face. Utilizing her momentum, Yugao swirled her body sending both her foot and her sword for Shizuku's face. The transformed woman easily blocked both with her left leg and left arm. Yugao frowned while Shizuku smirked as they landed on the ground, but Yugao wasn't finished as she flung 3 kunai forward. Shizuku quickly blocked those as well before turning her head back to Yugao's form. She barely ducked her head in time to dodge the sword strike that would have taken her head off. My sword might not be enough to stop a demon, but it is more than enough to support my team. I have never liked being the center of attention. I will gladly work in the shadows of my team if our goals succeed. They understand that, so I will make you understand that you chose the wrong person to attack, Yugao said while Shizuku snarled. Suetun, Sueshu Goragon, water release. Water attacking strong flow downpour, Shizuku shouted releasing a burst of water from her hands. The water quickly formed into a large dragon-type monster as it opened its mouth to crush Yugao in its grip. Yugao quickly stopped her movement and held up her sword. The water dragon bashed into her sword before the pressure overtook her as Shizuku laughed when Yugao slammed into a burning building letting the rubble fall to the ground. Take that bitch. Shizuku laughed uproariously. She actually clutched her stomach in pain, it all felt so good. She waited a few moments for anything to happen, but nothing did. Satisfied, Shizuku nodded her head and began to walk off to continue in her dealings before she heard the burning wood cackle. While that wouldn't have bothered her as cackling wood was to be expected from something burning, but she wasn't prepared for a shout. Suetun, Sueshu Goragon, Yugao's voice cried from the building. Shizuku gawked as water expelled from the ground up breaking the building's rooftops apart before it danced into the air. The water formed the same dragon Shizuku made before it turned its glare towards her. It roared as it went rushing for her and Shizuku quickly backflipped. This is stupid. How is she using my techniques? Is it that sword? The fuck is going on here? Shizuku thought in outrage. The water bashed into the ground at her feet making her sigh in relief. She quickly looked around, but she couldn't find Yugao anywhere. She was just gone. Suddenly the house next to her exploded. Shizuku jumped back in surprise before breathing a sigh. However, that sigh didn't last long as she felt a presence behind her. She turned around and noticed Yugao looked at her with apparent disdain. Shizuku quickly jumped back from her and skidded across the ground to a halt. Who are you looking at with those eyes? Shizuku shouted, rather irritated. Those eyes, those were the same eyes as her parents, the ones that looked at her with nothing but contempt, wishing that she hadn't been around. Shizuku frowned quickly, snarling and gritting her teeth. Stop looking at me like that. You don't know me. Shizuku shouted, flinging kunai and shuriken at Yugao's form. Yugao blocked each of them easily while Shizuku growled. She dashed in a burst of dust for Yugao's location and cocked her fist back. Yugao watched her come as Shizuku shouted and slammed her fist into the wall that Yugao was behind. The wall crumbled to the ground, but once the dust settled, Shizuku didn't have her target. She only had a destroyed wall. What is this? I'm strong. I have Morio-sama's power. I should not be being toyed with like some child. I am not a child. Shizuku shouted to anything listening. From where I am standing. You absolutely look like a child. You actually remind me of Tayuya-san, Yugao said from her place with her sword at her side. Shut your mouth. Shizuku shouted. She flung a kunai for Yugao's face, but by the time she released it she noticed that the purple-haired Heineken member was gone. Shizuku took a step back until she noticed Yugao on top of a non-burning building. Yugao held her sword into the air. I will offer you pity. We both know you're above that. Instead I will offer you the release to death. Shizuku felt her eyes must have been playing tricks on her. She watched Yugao's arms swing into a full 360 rotation, but she felt like she was watching it in slow motion as she did so. Aburozukyo, hazy moon night, Yugao spoke. Shizuku took a step back, but she watched Yugao disappear instantly like the wind. Her presence was gone entirely. No trace of chakra was present in the air. Shizuku looked left and right, up and down, several times, but she found nothing to tell her that Yugao was around her. Suddenly a sharp pain flew through her body as Shizuku widened her eyes. She looked down and noticed Yugao's sword plunged through her stomach. Shizuku coughed blood as she slowly dropped to the ground. Yugao fell with her as Shizuku cursed. Damn it, this wasn't how it was supposed to be. You weren't supposed to win. It was supposed to be. Shizuku didn't get to finish as Yugao slowly pulled her sword from Shizuku's body. Shizuku quickly fell to the ground. Despite the heat of the fires around her, she was cold. Shizuku shivered while Yugao watched her. 2 weeks passed, Yugao came to retrieve her sword and unsheathed it. It looked completely normal. Turning towards the man and his wife, she asked her silent question. Your sword is done. It is special and so are you. All you have to do is trust within each other and you'll find your place on your team. You treat that sword good. I put a lot of work into her, he said while Yugao slowly nodded. Thank you, she returned and walked away. Yugao-san, the wife called and Yugao turned around. I'm sure no one expects you to be the same as them. You are not normal or ordinary. Your sword will take you places, she said and Yugao nodded. If you are wondering, it's not that I copied your techniques, Yugao said. She had to feel impressed that the woman turned a glare towards her in disdain, but she ignored it. I merely switched the targets, Yugao said cryptically. Shizuku didn't have the time to ponder her words before Yugao threw something over her. It covered her vision, but she didn't know what. She then felt alone. She couldn't sense Yugao's chakra. Shizuku shivered. However, she couldn't stop the tears that fell down her face. She couldn't move. Meanwhile, Yugao stopped on a rooftop before frowning. She took a deep sigh and pinched the bridge of her nose and then shook her head. Naruto, I'm going to hate you for this, Yugao thought to herself. She looked down at her attire and sweat dropped. Looks like she'd need to order a new uniform. Sighing, Yugao looked up at the moon that had come into the sky. Naruto, you better hurry. Things are starting, Yugao spoke with a frown to her face. Other compound, Cheyenne watched in surprise as she was quickly pulled to the side by Sasuke. The young Uchiha growled before he swung his sword, effectively slicing a stone statue in half that had just ruptured out of the ground. It had only started a few moments ago. They were all ascending the stairs just minutes ago before they felt a rather moderate earthquake. It rumbled for a bit before settling down. As they had gotten to their feet, Cheyenne and her companions noticed the ground tear apart and stone statues came from it. Each of them held some kind of weapon ranging from spears to short swords. They were all encased in some form of rock armor that made them impenetrable to normal attacks and tactics. Luckily, Sasuke and the others were hardly normal. Sasuke pushed Cheyenne back slightly as they noticed the figures converge over them. It seemed that Cheyenne's suspicion was very well founded. Sasuke was ready to end them all before he heard a shout. Raikiri, Satatsu, lightning cutter, twin sever. Kakashi spoke before Sasuke and Cheyenne watched the one-eyed Jonin's sword plunge into the stone statue in front of him, making it crumble to the ground and into dust. Kakashi watched the action with a semi-interested gaze before turning forward. Lightning ran off the sword like drips of water onto the ground while he leaned up and frowned. It seems that the enemy is getting desperate. These attacks are getting to be more controlled than the last time. Cheyenne-san, you must seal Morio at once. Kakashi spoke with a tone of seriousness that Sasuke almost didn't think his teammate could possess, but it was probably just those rare times that it came forward. Cheyenne snapped out of her gaze before finally nodding. She didn't turn around before she ran up the stairs and entered into the cave. Sasuke and Kakashi watched her leave before turning back. They noticed Sai land to the ground next to them. "Do we have a plan?" Sai asked. The area around them was quickly becoming covered in large doses of malicious chakra, inhuman chakra that is. Sasuke looked back to the incoming warriors as they slowly started to surround them all. "We keep fighting until the priestess seals the demon. It's as simple as that," Sasuke answered. Sai's smile seemed to widen while Kakashi turned and patted Sasuke's shoulder. "You seem to have gotten into the role of ordering others around. I always knew the Uchiha were bossy, but you take the cake, Sasuke," Kakashi replied. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched and he was ready to tell his former sensei off before he noticed the look in Kakashi's eyes. "Ma, that's not necessarily a bad thing," Kakashi said, taking a step forward. He slowly brought his sword up and then entered into his stance. Tengaku Hako, Raikiri, Shurshur Jigakutai, Heavenly White Light, Lightning Cutter, Lion Hellzone, Kakashi shouted, and before Sasuke or Sai could say anything, they watched as Kakashi stabbed his sword into the ground. However, that wasn't what truly surprised them as they noticed a large white light radiate from the sword stuck in the ground. Kakashi tightened his grip over his sword before his feet took 2 steps before he shot off into a blur. His sword tore through the ground while his exposed Sharingan spun in his eyes wildly. Kakashi crashed through the army of stone statues, cutting each one that was before him in a single line. The light didn't settle down, no, in fact it seemed to be shining even brighter as it came in contrast with Kakashi's face and his Sharingan. The white light behind him brightened the burning gaze of his Sharingan before Kakashi frowned. The one-eyed Jonin placed his second hand on his sword before he ripped it out of the ground and swung it through the air. Quickly a burst of lightning expelled from his sword and into the stone statues in an arch path, reducing them to ash in seconds. Sasuke and Sai watched in slight surprise while the other stone statues kept coming. Kakashi watched them come before a small smile came on his face. "Mama, don't try so hard. You'll be dealt with soon enough." "Sasuke, Sai, let's go," Kakashi said while Sasuke smirked. Sai nodded without a word before the two went to join their comrade in the field of battle. With Cheyenne huffed as she ran through the cave's twists and turns. It wasn't a very long while before she heard the sounds of the explosions behind her fade away. The Uzumaki priestess wasn't sure how she felt about this. She had hoped that Naruto would be there with her for what she was about to do. Already she truly missed being by his side, the side that was her family. All her life people had told off her abilities at drawing complex seals as a simple child's curiosity. Some of her former advisors told her to stop with the child's play and take things seriously. Cheyenne never liked being talked down to like that, but she did stop eventually. It was only now that she realized that her stopping had been a direct insult to her heritage. "Nisama said that he would take me home," Cheyenne said with a small smile. She remembered Naruto gently offering a hug as she had snuggled into his embrace. It had calmed her soul and she wished that she could return to that. No, she would return to that. Right after she finished this. She hoped anyway. Cheyenne could sense the malicious chakra. It was close. After finally running, Cheyenne quickly came to the center of the cave. It was filled with spiritual residue chakra. It was coming off in sheer volume or mass. It was almost suffocating. Shaking her head, Cheyenne took a deep breath before she appeared in the direct center of the cave. Right here, right at her feet, was where Morio's body was sealed. All she had to do was repair it for the final time, and he would never have to show his face around this world again. This seal on the ground. She would do it now. Taking a deep breath, Cheyenne smiled. She found it all kind of funny. Most of her teenage life, she didn't care about dying, but now she wanted to live. It was a strange feeling. Cheyenne calmly placed her hands together before carefully going through her hand signs. These hand signs were different from the standard 12 that Konoha and the other Shinobi villages taught. These were seals of the priestess temple. Now that Cheyenne had thought about it, maybe this was an Uzumaki seal given how strong it was, but enough about that. Focusing her chakra, she quickly spoke. Yoshiro no Fuin, Kai, Shrine Seal, release, she said. She felt the walls around her vibrate violently and forcefully, but she kept calm. She had to keep her cool at this moment. Cheyenne quickly started weaving through more and more hand signs as the rumbling slowly came to a still. The seal quickly arched up into a barrier. Cheyenne studied on this. This seal had various stages, and right now she was just at the start of the first stage. Now came the second. However, Cheyenne was surprised to hear laughing. She widened her eyes and nearly lost control of the technique before turning around. She widened her eyes when she saw a man right behind her. Splendid priestess. You did what this foolish mortal couldn't do. You actually managed to unseal my body. I must thank you, he said demonically. Slowly Cheyenne watched as the demon-possessed Yomi came into view. His hands still clapping. His eyes seemed so dead that it actually was enough to unnerve Cheyenne, if only inwardly. How did you get into this cave? Oni-Isama's team would have surely stopped you. Cheyenne protested vehemently. She didn't want to accept the doubt slowly creeping into her mind. No, positive. Think something positive, damn it. As if reading the young Uzumaki priestess's thoughts, Morio chuckled and shook his head. Oh them. Well, they are distracted by what's going on outside. It was easy to slip inside. Let them fight my army as much as they like. They will be in for a terrifying truth soon enough, he said, licking his lips, sending a shiver down Cheyenne's spine. No, they won't. I will seal you before they have the chance to find out that truth. Cheyenne said, turning back forward. Her eardrums bumped as she heard Morio cackle at her. You think I will give you that chance? He hollered. Cheyenne didn't have the chance to find out what he meant before she felt pressure on the barrier. She watched as Morio threw Yomi's body into the barrier, literally breaking his body apart to get through. Cheyenne watched on, disgusted at the scene, before she heard Yomi shouting at the top of his lungs before his body bursted in a pool of blood. Cheyenne didn't even have the time to comprehend anything as she watched in absolute horror as Morio's spirit dived into the seal. The same seal that contained his body. Cheyenne took an unconscious step back as a loud roar resounded through the caves. It made her legs trembled. Cheyenne gasped and dark purplish energy blasted from the seal, easily breaking the barrier around them apart. Cheyenne's hair flapped in the breeze of the air that savagely pressed against her person. She watched in disbelief as the energy swirled in the air before actually bashing against the wall, cutting them up entirely. I will never serve that brat. I will not bow to him. I am Morio and I bow to No1. His voice hollered as Cheyenne found herself confronted by a dark figure. Its body was hidden from view, but Cheyenne could easily make out the form of at least 3 or 4 heads. Each of them shaped to look like some kind of demonic, serpentine dragon thing. His eyes glowed blood red while he flicked his dark blue tongues. He gazed down at Cheyenne and snickered demonically. Now then, I wonder how it will feel when I devour you, he said, and before Cheyenne knew anything, she was quickly engulfed in darkness. Only one thought came to her as this happened. Oni-sama. Please save me, Cheyenne thought before she found herself in endless darkness. With Naruto, Naruto shouted at held his hands over his head. The pain of his headache even more excruciating than before. His arms seemed to forget their pain at that time as he clutched his skull. He could feel his honshu being sapped away forcefully. It was like nothing he had ever experienced. Kyubi watched with a snarl while Naruto opened one eye. He narrowed his eye as he watched the various explosions outside. His eyes had turned back to their silver color as the spirit surrounding him told him what was going on frantically. So Cheyenne went to go seal the demon. Naruto supposed that he couldn't stop her if she was going to. That was what this mission was supposed to be about. However, he couldn't stop this sinking feeling. He had to go right now. However, he still couldn't move. Kyuso, move, damn it. Naruto urged his body. It pained him, but he took his hand from his forehead and quickly placed his thumb near his mouth. His teeth bit into the flesh, drawing blood before he traced his bloody thumb over his seal. Keikuchios no Jutsu, Naruto called through gritted teeth. He lay still for a moment before he felt overwhelming pressure. He cracked open his other eye as his gaze took in the full form of the Shinigami hovering over him. You have called me, Shin said, and Naruto slowly nodded. Shin, what's happening? Ever since I came to this island I have been having my power taken. You said nothing could hold their power and still live, and yet something it taking it. I hear a voice. It's laughing at me. It's not Kyubi. What's happening to me? Naruto asked while the Shinigami merely looked at his summoner in obvious pain at the moment. He narrowed his steely eyes over the blonde before placing a hand to his forehead. Suddenly Naruto found his headache had stopped and his reserves filled. He leaned up. What? What did you do? Naruto asked, and the god of death sighed. I gave you my honshu. All spiritual beings are comprised of it, so it is easy to refill your reserves with my own power. Now then, as to what you have told me, it is obvious that you are resonating, Shin spoke. Naruto took a small stretch before turning back to his summon. Resonating? What is that? Naruto asked while the Shinigami removed his hand from the blonde's head, allowing for Naruto to slowly stand. It is the feeling of closeness you feel with your Shinju. Only you will experience this feeling. Once a connection has been established, then it will not break. This likely candidate to be your first Shinju is obviously hostile and apprehensive towards the idea of it serving you. Now that you have connected, even if you leave this island, it will continue to take honshu from you until you die, making me revive you, and then the process will continue, he said. Then how do I stop it? Naruto asked in increasing frustration, which Shin could easily see. He had hoped that his summoner would have understood by this time, but that was beside the point. That's what explanations were for. It is fairly simple. You must make it recognize that you are the master and it is the servant, or partner if you prefer. If your heart is weak, then it will not respect your strength. However, it is easy to see that if you do go, then you will likely die anyway, Shin said, and Naruto turned to look at him with a firm glare, which Shin turned. He could see Naruto asking the silent question and answered. You have your reserves, yes, but you do not have long to maintain them. Remember that this is my own honshu running through you. In no time it will return to me. This was just to alleviate your pain for the time being. If he takes all of your honshu, then you will never use it again. You will still be my summoner, but you will be back to chakra. The process of reverting the honshu back would most likely be more than you could bear. So in this case, it would bode well for you if you simply just did this right the first time, Shin said, and Naruto looked down at the ground. He looked at his sword before he knelt and gripped it firmly. Couldn't you help me? Naruto asked, and he didn't have to turn around to know Shin was glaring down at him firmly. There is nothing to be gained in my helping you. I will respect me, not you. You will need it to respect you. How you do this method I will not tell you. You must learn this yourself, Shin said, and Naruto slowly turned around. It rather surprised Shin when he saw Naruto's wide smile. Thanks, Shin. I understand. Don't worry, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll do my best, Dadabayo. After all, I still have to keep my promise and take Cheyenne-chan home. I swore it and I never go back on my word. Naruto said before he climbed to the window sill and dashed out of the room. The Shinigami watched him leave before closing his eyes. A very, very, very small smile came to his face. Interesting Uzumaki Naruto, Shin thought to himself. His right hand quickly glowed white and he swung his arm. Naruto didn't see it, but his sword glowed bright for a second before dissipating. This is all I will do for you, Uzumaki Naruto. I cannot help you anymore. Do not fail me, Shin said in thought before fading out from view. Naruto grinned as he dashed towards the upcoming battle. So he had to get Morio's respect, huh? Well then that's what he would do. Then he would take Cheyenne home. He would do it all. He wouldn't stop. No, not yet. There were still things he had to accomplish and he'd do it. That was Uzumaki Naruto. If one had to truly think about it, then they often found themselves asking this question. What was darkness? Was it bad? It was just the opposite of light, right? There was nothing completely wrong with it. It wasn't its fault that bad things like evil were associated with it. It was just there. And yet, why did it feel so heavy? So lonely? So sad? Cheyenne didn't know the answer to any of these questions. She just felt her heart suffocating from the pressure. What was happening? Why was it like this? Cheyenne didn't remember. All her experiences, they came to her tenfold. The glares and the whispers whenever she tried to play with other children, the sadness of when her mother was gone. Cheyenne had nobody. No one to comfort her, no one to understand her. Yes, priestess, give your heart to me. I can make the pain, the loneliness, and the sadness go away. Entrust your heart to me, Morio called out sinisterly. Cheyenne clung to her body more in fright. Would it really all go away? Was it that easy? Cheyenne didn't know. She just wanted it all to go away and never come back. She never asked to be the priestess of the land of demons. She never asked to have this death prediction ability. She just wanted to be happy. Morio snickered as his dark aura continued to surround the blonde priestess. Soon her resistance would fall and he would be free. Morio chuckled at the irony of it all. How feeble this woman thought herself to be. How easy it was to play on her insecurities. It had to be unfair to have this much fun with a priestess. He would devour this woman and then he would work on breaking the seal of this prison, melding his body with his spirit, and then he would bring about the reign of his 1,000-year kingdom. Morio licked his lips quickly. No more toying around was needed. Now was the time for him to strike. Now was the time to end her life and begin his own. You will die here, priestess. You will be the same as your mother. Never will you see the light of day again. Now free me from my prison. Morio shouted to himself. As one of his many heads opened its mouth, Morio cackled as the wide jaws made their way to the tiny form of the Uzumaki priestess. Cheyenne hunched her body closer. Oni-sama isn't coming for me. He never cared about me. Oni-sama, will you at least remember me? Cheyenne asked, closing her eyes. In the pocket of her long yellow jacket, Cheyenne's bell quickly pulsated. A ringing sound reverberated through the darkness surrounding Cheyenne, bringing it to her senses. She heard it. Its soothing melody was rich to her ears. Slowly Cheyenne opened her eyes and blinked. She watched Morio coming for her quickly. It would all be over soon. How could you say that, Cheyenne-chan? How could you think that way about your Oni-sama? Cheyenne widened her eyes as she heard a small voice. It whispered in her ears before Cheyenne felt encompassing warmth. She watched as a pulse of chakra escaped from the bell, quickly shielding her in a great flash of light. Morio widened his eyes before he quickly backed away. This light, it hurt his body. His demonic body could not stand such a purified form of chakra such as this. The demon snarled as his heads danced around the bell. As soon as the shield dropped, then so would the rest of Cheyenne's defenses. Then it would mark the beginning of the end for her. Cheyenne quickly blinked as the darkness began to fade away from her person. She soon found herself engulfed by the light. Its aura so soothing and warming that it had no chance for her to doubt herself. Cheyenne didn't know where she was anymore, but she felt free. Cheyenne slowly stood to her feet. I must be dead and this is heaven. Strange, I thought I'd be in a purgatory first, not that I'm complaining, Cheyenne thought to herself. As she walked the strange light-filled escape that she was in, Cheyenne paused. She quickly rummaged through her pockets frantically. Cheyenne widened her eyes. Gone. It was gone. Her bell was gone. Looking for this? Asked a voice. Cheyenne quickly gasped before looking left and right, but finding no one in particular. Who's there? Come out and show yourself. Cheyenne shouted. She looked to her left and right again. She circled behind herself several times, but she didn't see anyone with her. My, how demanding you are. You certainly didn't get that from me. I swear that she gets it from you, said the voice. Cheyenne wasn't sure, but she felt like the voices around her weren't even taking to her anymore. Me? Oh no, never. I was never like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that was you though, another voice responded. Cheyenne growled before balling her fists. This is it, this was her hell. She was literally going to go crazy here, and then there was nothing she could do about it. It was all too much for her to bear. Enough of this. Cheyenne shouted, making the voices silence themselves. I am not some kind of joke that you can make fun of. Who are you and what do you want from me? Cheyenne huffed out. The voices were silenced. Cheyenne paused before looking out into the seemingly endless vast of light. There wasn't a single sound for a while. It slowly began to unnerve Cheyenne. Cheyenne-chan, tell us, can you hear it? The voice asked. Cheyenne blinked before focusing her hearing. She could hear nothing except for their voices, whoever these people or beings were. Cheyenne took a deep breath and sighed. Hear what? I don't hear anything, Cheyenne responded truthfully. Then you have no yet learned, Cheyenne-chan. You have not learned to completely put your faith into someone. Cheyenne-chan, why do you think that your Oni-sama has abandoned you? The next voice asked. So far, Cheyenne speculated that there were only two voices talking to her and there were no more. She supposed that it would be easier to think of it that way than not. Finally, Cheyenne registered the voice's question before her heart sank. She lowered her head until her eyes started at the ground or at her feet. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. He'll leave me just like everyone else. Just like Okasama did, just like Oda-sama did, just like the other kids did, and just like everyone else. Cheyenne quickly said. She could feel the distress leak from her voice, prompting the voices to quickly respond. Really? Does this look like a person who would lie to you? Cheyenne opened her eyes and noticed the familiar blonde looking at her with a soft smile. His bright blue eyes glared into her pale eyes. The voices waited for her reply before Cheyenne closed her eyes and cursed underneath her breath. Looks are deceiving. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep placing my trust in someone only to have it broken each and every time. Promises are only broken words and are only there to remind someone of the things that they can't do themselves. Oni-sama wouldn't want someone like me. Who wants the harbinger of death constantly next to them? Cheyenne asked. She slowly watched Naruto fade away into nothingness before sighing. Wow, you can't be an Uzumaki, Cheyenne-chan. You're way too depressing to be one, the voice said with a light-hearted chuckle. Cheyenne widened her eyes before looking up at the supposed clear ceiling. How did you know I'm a Uzumaki? Cheyenne asked before she felt two sets of arms wrap around her body, pulling her closely into two different bodies. Because Ka-chan denied you her very heritage, Cheyenne quickly turned around, but then she felt hands pressed to her eyes, masking the person's appearance. Not yet, Cheyenne-chan. Now can you truly tell us that you have given up on your Oni-sama? The voice asked. Though the person couldn't see it, they felt the wet tears in Cheyenne's eyes as they trailed down her cheeks. Cheyenne's knees felt weak before she dropped to the ground, but the figure managed to keep their hands over her eyes, but they quickly pulled her close. Take a deep breath and extend your chakra. Tell me what you hear, the figure said. Cheyenne followed instructions. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath and pinged her chakra, making it reverberate. Cheyenne felt surprised when she found herself out of the cavern. She sighed quickly. I hear fighting. A lot of fighting. I hear Sasuke-san's voice. He's throwing out commands to Kakashi-san and Sai-san. I also hear, fast running, a heartbeat, his heartbeat. My Oni-sama, Cheyenne responded. The figure smiled before they felt more of Cheyenne's watery tears on their hands. Yes, you see, he has not abandoned you. He is coming for you, Cheyenne. He is going to take you home. He is going to make you happy, the figure said before removing their hand. Cheyenne slowly opened her eyes and gasped. Hello, daughter, the figure said while Cheyenne felt the words caught in her throat. Oh, Ka-sama, Cheyenne said. Standing in front of the woman was the previous priestess of the land of demons. Standing before Cheyenne was her mother, Miroku. With Naruto cursed as he slashed his sword across the front of his eyes. He quickly cut down a stone warrior before quickly moving on to the next. His feet were a blur across the field as Naruto continued his sprint. He could feel his friends fighting just a couple of yards away. Quickly taking his sword, Naruto raised it into the air, swiftly blocking one of the countless stone soldiers in his path. You're in my way, Naruto claimed. His sword was urgently covered in the white flames of his honshu. With a twitch of his body, Naruto vanished in a burst of speed. He flailed his sword around gracefully while simultaneously cutting each warrior in his vision. His flames seemed to glow brighter with each slash and each movement of his hand. Naruto then proceeded to jump overhead of one warrior. Quickly using the warrior's stone sturdy head for leverage, he launched himself further into the air. On the ground, Naruto watched as his stone opponents suddenly bursted in a large white flames before shattering into pieces along the ground. Naruto quickly landed down to the ground, his eyes zoned in on the cavern in front of him. Hang on, Cheyenne-chan. I'll be there in just a moment, Naruto proclaimed. He tightened his grip over his sword slightly before moving on his way. Performing a small backflip, Naruto made it to the lower platforms of the temple. He looked out and saw a large streak of lightning coming from just a few feet away. Uchiha no Hanran, Chidori, Kinshi sa Ramon, Uchiha Rebellion, Thousand Birds, Forbidden Gates, Naruto heard a certain Uchiha call out just in time to see a large streak of lightning spiraling in his direction. The lightning spiraled viciously across the temple plains, quickly ravaging the massive army of Morio before making its way in Naruto's direction. Naruto looked at the incoming strike to his person before frowning. He quickly held his sword into the air, coating it in futon chakra. The wind swirled around Naruto's sword before he swung it downward and into the oncoming Raiton strike. Being the stronger of the two, the futon chakra easily sliced through the lightning and the sword bashed into the ground, releasing the pent-up chakra before dispersing both the wind and lightning in a single move. Naruto took a deep breath to steady himself. If Ka-chan ever finds out that I did that, she will kill me. Maybe even Yuri-chan and Yura-chan might. Naruto shivered at the mere thought of it all. However, he couldn't think about that right now. You're late, loser. Naruto looked up from his position and noticed Sasuke smirking at him, his sword resting on his shoulder. Naruto returned the smirk before walking over to the group of three. Kakashi gave an eye smile before collecting himself. Sai didn't show any visible reaction other than the fake smile plastered on his face. The four quickly joined together before Naruto proceeded to punch Sasuke in the shoulder. You did that move on purpose, team, Naruto claimed while Sasuke snorted. However, no one missed the light smile on his face. It was then that they all noticed more of Morio's army advancing on their position. If they stayed like they were, then they were sure to be surrounded, but being outnumbered hardly means being outmatched. How are you feeling, Naruto? You don't have to push yourself, you know, Kakashi said, taking one of his stances while Naruto offered a small smirk on his face. Better than ever, Dadabayo. Chien-chan is in that cave, right? Naruto asked. Kakashi and Sasuke nodded. The male Uchiha quickly turned to his partner. You'd better get going, loser. It shouldn't have taken her that long to seal the damn thing. Obviously something went wrong with the sealing. No one here knows sealing more than you do at the moment. Get going, we'll cover you, Sasuke stated. Naruto turned a small glance to him before swiftly smirking in response to Sasuke's statement. Fine then. Kakashi, Sasuke, Sai, on my command, Naruto said, raising his hand into the air. Sai took a glance at Naruto. He had no idea what the plan was here, but judging from the looks on Sasuke and Kakashi's face, they not only knew the plan, but they also knew the best course of action in which to implement it. Something was wrong here, Sai could feel it. He didn't know why, but he never second-guessed himself. Sai knew something was wrong and he'd have to report it quickly, but what could he say? Something was wrong merely based on his assumptions? He could never just speculate like that. Move! Naruto shouted. Sai broke out of his stupor to see Sasuke and Kakashi charge at the ground of stone soldiers. Both swords lit up in Raitan chakra. Glancing to each other, Sasuke and Kakashi nodded as they tapped their swords together. Both swords slowly melded their chakra together before Sasuke and Kakashi pulled them apart, slowly forming a single chain of lightning. Raikiri, Raiden, lightning cutter, lightning transmission, Sasuke and Kakashi shouted in unison before they quickly charged at the onslaught of opponent. Together they extended the chain of lightning, quickly making it slice through the midsections of their stone opponents. Sasuke and Kakashi smirked as their individual Sharingan flared and spun wildly. The technique quickly began to open up a path that Naruto took advantage of. Sai merely watched, confused by all the actions in front of him as he watched Naruto run in close proximity to the chain of Raitan chakra. Honshu, Rasengan, power of life, spiraling sphere, Naruto called out, quickly jumping over the chain of lightning to take the lead. Sai watched as a large ball came into Naruto's hand. It was an entirely white glow. He watched Naruto slam the ball into one of the soldiers, making it break apart. The three dashed through the seemingly endless crowds of soldiers before finally making it to the end. Sasuke and Kakashi took their stances while Naruto kept on running towards the cave. We'll hold this line, Naruto. Go help Chien-san. You did have a promise to keep after all, Kakashi said, smiling underneath his mask. Naruto didn't turn around, but he did smirk to himself as he hopped to the entrance of the cave. Naruto could feel the malicious chakra swirling around inside. It was somehow combating with his Honshu, but unlike the many previous times, his Honshu wasn't being taken from his body. Naruto didn't know what Shin did, but for now it didn't matter. Naruto would take Chien home. No longer would she be alone. Taking a deep breath, Naruto made his way inside the cavern. He didn't know what he would find, but it didn't matter. He had work to do. With Cheyenne, Okasama. I do not understand. Why are you here? Cheyenne asked with barely concealed surprise or happiness as she took in her mother's form. Miroku casted a gentle smile upon her daughter before slowly bringing the Uzumaki priestess into a small hug. Cheyenne, please forgive me for the things I've done. I left you alone to bear the weight of our priestesshood alone. Nothing I do can atone for that. On top of that, I didn't tell you our heritage. How foolish I must have been. I am so sorry, Miroku apologized. Cheyenne felt the warmth of her mother against her body before slowly frowning. Cheyenne didn't know how to respond to all of these confessions. She felt like she should forgive her mother. After all, it wasn't intentionally her fault that she was left alone. She had a job to do and she sacrificed herself so that people could live, and yet, how was Cheyenne supposed to deal with all the pain of those years? All those terrified glares at her constantly? How was Cheyenne supposed to deal with that? Cheyenne slowly tore herself away from her mother's body, much to Miroku's surprise, and pushed the woman back slightly. Don't apologize to me. You did what you felt was right at the time. Okasama, I can't say that I don't harbor some form of resentment towards you, Cheyenne said slowly, almost choking on the words as they came out of her mouth. Miroku merely nodded sadly. The former priestess had expected this. Of course, a simple apology wouldn't undo the damage that had already been done. That was impossible. Do you know what I went through? Feeling isolated, mistreated, rumored about constantly. I just wanted friends, but everyone pushed me away, so afraid that this ability would kill them if they did something wrong. Coming here, I realized that I didn't want to save any of them. I would have been happy if we all merely died and Morio would ravage the lands for whoever knows how long. I would have been happy so long as I didn't have to deal with what you put on me, Cheyenne huffed. Miroku widened her eyes slightly. The opposite voice remained silent while Cheyenne tried to take calming breaths. Cheyenne balled her fists, making her nails drive into her skin, but she didn't have the time to mind. Cheyenne, Miroku started, but a raised hand from Cheyenne caused her to stop. And now I finally have someone who wants me. I finally have someone who cares about me. Not just Toroho for once. I now have Oni-sama, and another family. He promised he'd take me home. Even now I can hear him. His heart's pounding wildly, his eyes focused, his feet moving through the cavern. He running to me to take me home. Don't apologize for this, Cheyenne answered. She quickly held her gaze and gave her mother a bright smile. Because I now have what I have wanted all along, Cheyenne replied. Miroku widened her eyes before slowly looking down at the ground. I didn't want to leave you alone. Back when Morio was free, I knew that there was only one way to defeat him. I had to seal him inside me. I could have done it to you, but I could never subject you to such a future or such vicious chakra. I sealed it into myself. I thought my Uzumaki blood would stop it. Yes, Cheyenne, you are a true Uzumaki, Miroku responded. Cheyenne slowly widened her eyes before Miroku continued. I sealed Morio into my body, but he slowly took over me, devouring me from the inside out. However, thanks to our clan's special chakra, I was able to, for lack of a better word, detach my spirit from my body. My spirit gravitated to the closed form of pure chakra. Cheyenne, that was you, and I was placed inside the bell. I have seen what has happened to you throughout your life. You might be right, I have no right to apologize. Nothing I say now will change the past, but the things I tell you now will shape your future, Miroku quickly replied. Cheyenne raised an eyebrow to her mother's words before she noticed the elder woman take a seat on the white floor. Cheyenne sat beside her while Miroku looked up at the seemingly endless white space. Uzushiogakure is our home, Cheyenne-chan. It was located in the land of eddies. Cheyenne, I will not tell you of all of our clan history, for I don't know it all, but if Naruto-san says he will take you home, then I am sure that they have clan books and such for you to read. However, I will explain to you the lineage of the Uzumaki priestesses," Miroku explained. Cheyenne slowly nodded while Miroku sighed. "Ever since the Uzumaki clan was founded, our clan has had a much more special connection towards the spiritual side of chakra rather than the physical. The Uzumaki believed in the powers of beings beyond humans and sought to become like that. The very first priestess of the Uzumaki clan was called Kureha Uzumaki. She was also the most powerful priestess. You see, Cheyenne, unlike most Uzumaki, the priestesses were not endowed with the red hair or the physical prowess that most Uzumaki exuded. No, the priestess spent their time mostly praying to kami or other beings for the continued perseverance of the Uzumaki clan. Kureha-sama established the priesthood for the Uzumaki clan. She had a very special chakra. Maybe it had to be that she was the great-granddaughter of the first clan head of the Uzumaki clan." Miroku stopped to take a breath before continuing. She could see Cheyenne fixated on her story, but continued on. "Kureha-san was able to receive divine blessing from kami or something of that nature. With her power, she was actually able to help subdue Morio the first time he was unleashed through Uzushigakure. She easily defeated him and people recognized her ability in priesthood. So from her line came more Uzumaki female priestesses. Even now most don't know what her form looked like, even I don't, but it was truly a beautiful form is what the scroll said about it. However, word spread of her power and those outside the Uzumaki clan feared her greatly. Most thought her to be a bijou given a human form. A lot saw her as the ideal mate, one to have under control of her power. Kureha-sama knew this, but she stood fast. Fearing for her clan's safety, Kureha-sama split her power into two divine Uzumaki objects. One is the bell that you have here, but the second, no one knows. It's been lost to the ages and into the realm of legend. However, Cheyenne-chan, you must understand that it is indeed real. Anyway, once Morio was sealed, then Kureha stated that more Uzumaki priestesses would be needed. The clan had agreed, and so for every 10 children born, 2 girls were trained in the priestess path. Kureha-sama shortly after had children of her own, 2 girls and 1 boy. The girls went on to inherit the will of their mother as well as the title of Uzumaki priestess, becoming the leaders of the Uzumaki priestess shrine. However, the single boy she had was the amazing factor, as he was the only male to have a chakra that resonated to the shrine and divine objects much more than the sisters. The brother would actually then set up a compound outside of the Uzumaki clan village for monks and the like. Actually, Hai no Kuni's fire temple is known for subconsciously passing the teachings of the brother throughout their temple, Miroku said with a sudden pause. Cheyenne widened her eyes to all this information that she was learning before noticing that her mother was continuing once again. Once the fall of the Uzumaki came, and the survivors scattered, somehow Morio got transported as well until he somehow ended up here with us. The descendants of the 2 sisters and the brother went on to form their own lines. However, even until the end of the Uzumaki, priestesses were trained to fight and protect themselves under Kureha-sama's previous orders, as the divine beings required those of a fight body and fit mind. The only other priestess I know who came close to her had to be my mother, the priestess before me, Momiji Uzumaki. I do not count her son, if only because he was never claimed as a priest or priestess, Miroku replied. Cheyenne gasped while Miroku kept a small smile on her face. Cheyenne, I wanted you to live a normal life, but I can see that you are special. I should have given you the things you needed and wanted, not just what I felt you needed. Cheyenne, as a priestess, I will do as you say and will not apologize, but as a mother I will keep this regret in my heart of how I failed you. Cheyenne-chan, please continue the line. Do not let it die out. I have faith in you. You are my daughter and I will always love you. Go home, Cheyenne. Be safe. Most of all, Cheyenne-chan, do what your heart tells you, Miroku said. Cheyenne balled her fists as she watched Miroku fade away. Cheyenne slowly stood to her feet while Miroku smiled. I'm glad I could talk to you one more time. Go and be what I know you can be, Miroku said before she was gone, leaving Cheyenne once again. Cheyenne looked up at nothing before smiling when a lone tear fell down her cheek. I understand, Okasama. I will do what must be done. Thank you, Cheyenne replied mentally. She then turned her head to the right and smiled. He's here. Oni-sama, Cheyenne spoke with a wide smile across her face. She didn't know what it was that she was supposed to do, but she knew that she felt warm. She felt so much warmth. Warmth enough to take the coldness of her past out of her life. Cheyenne was warm. Just like Cheyenne had said, Naruto hopped out of the entrance to the cave and landed gracefully to the ground, taking into account all the things around him. He noticed the large swirling black ball of negative chakra right in front of his face. Closing his eyes, Naruto forced his Honshu to push past Morio's negative chakra before finally coming to the center. There was Cheyenne curled up softly into a small ball with the glow from her bell protecting her. Naruto gave a small smile. Okay, good. Cheyenne-chan is still alive, Naruto said to himself. However, he quickly noticed the black ball taking shape. Each shape formed the image of several dragon heads. The heads swirled around wildly in the air before focusing their eyes over Naruto's form. Morio quickly snarled while Naruto frowned. You're the one who will. No. I will never serve you. The great demon shouted before he lashed out a tendril towards the blonde. Naruto watched the incoming action upon his person before closing his eyes. You're the one who was calling me. Very well, we'll have a go, Dadabayo. Naruto thought to himself. Unknown to him, Kyubi gave a light smirk on his face. Naruto slid to the right to dodge the shot before he noticed a second and third strike coming his way. Naruto quickly made a clone and had it grab his arm, sending him flying into the air. Yuzu no Fukushu, Dai Uzumaki Ikari, Naruto shouted. The first seal on his sword quickly lit up in light before fading just as quickly as it was lit. He swung his body through the air along with his sword. Morio watched as water sprayed from the sword in Naruto's hands. It quickly formed into the shape of missiles that launched themselves at his person. Being so large, Morio could only take the hits that came on his person as the thunderous sounds of water explosions hit his body. Growling, the demon flew one of his heads towards Naruto's body, easily anticipating his devouring of the blonde who was supposed to be lord over him. He would not allow it. Naruto took notice of the incoming head. Quickly slapping his palms together, Naruto created a wall of Kage Bunshins guarding his body. Using one of them for leverage, Naruto placed his feet to its backside and locked away from it just in time for the dragon head to devour the clones with ease, making them go up in smoke. However, that smoke covered his eyes as the real Naruto landed on his head. Naruto gave a stern glare before raising his sword into the air. Naruto quickly coated it in white fire before stabbing it into the first of Morio's dragon heads. The pure flames of Naruto's Honshu burned into his body, making the multi-headed demon screech in a deep voice. Naruto grinned before he quickly moved his feet into a dash. His sword tore the demon's skin with the white flames of his Honshu burning brightly in the cavern. Morio quickly used one of his other heads to intercept the blonde, causing him harm. Where is Cheyenne-chan? Naruto asked heatedly. The dragon snarled towards his supposed new lord-in-waiting. His teeth bashed against Naruto's sword when the blonde quickly raised it for a block. Due to their different sizes, Morio sent Naruto flying with a loud crash into one of the nearby stone walls. You, like her, will be devoured soon enough. I will not be subjugated by a human once again. Morio cried out with an intense glare in Naruto's direction. Cheyenne widened her eyes from inside the sphere that she was in. She watched the outside battle going on from where she was. She shifted herself tighter into a ball. Oni-sama, Cheyenne thought to herself. She watched Naruto slump to the ground with a small huff. She watched him rise to his feet before using his thumb to scrape off some dirt on his cheek. Are you just going to let him fight alone? Cheyenne widened her eyes, hearing the same voice that had yet to show itself as before. And what could I do for Oni-sama? I'm just a priestess. I am not Kureha-san or Momiji-Oba-asama. I don't have power like that. Cheyenne exclaimed. The voice stayed silent for a second before chuckling. That's not the question you should be asking yourself. It's not, what can I do for Oni-sama? The question you should be asking yourself is, what am I willing to do for Oni-sama? You might be a priestess, you are a Uzumaki, but you are hardly a Uzumaki priestess. Do you take pride in your heritage? Can you take pride in your responsibilities? The voice spoke to her. Cheyenne widened her eyes before looking back out. She watched Naruto quickly fling a multitude of shuriken for Morio's body. The demon dodged them all effortlessly. Yuzu no Fukushu, Raime no Kyoto, Whirlpool Revenge, Intense Thunder Swirl, Cheyenne heard Naruto call out. Quickly she noticed the white flames of his sword dissipate. The second seal of his sword lit up and then dissipated. The sword was coated in a furious and angry field of lightning. Taking the sword, Naruto swung it left, then right, and then left again. Over and over he swung it as Cheyenne watched lightning pour from the sword in wide arched forms that quickly bashed into Morio's body at an astonishing rate. Even now I can see he is willing to do anything to save you. Are you willing to do anything to go home? Are you willing to do anything to keep him safe? Are you willing to do anything to make sure that you live up to the standard of an Uzumaki priestess of the Uzumaki clan? The voice suddenly shouted. Cheyenne balled her fists as she watched Naruto fight. Quickly Cheyenne raised her hands into the air and brought them to her face. She wiped her tears away. No more crying. Again? What does he mean again? Was he used before? Naruto thought to himself as he watched Morio stand to his feet once again. Naruto readied himself for another strike against his person. Suddenly Naruto groaned as he grasped his head and dropped to his knees. Kit, he's re-establishing the connection. He's taking your Honshu again. Whatever the Shinigami gave you, it's over now. There is nothing keeping him from killing us now. You have to end this now. Kyuubi protested. Naruto's fingers drove into his skull painfully. He heard Kyuubi's words and knew he was right. Even now he could feel the life drawing away from his person. He had to restrain Morio somehow, but Shin told him that the way for him to make the demon his Shinju would come to him when he needed it. He needed it now and he had nothing. Kyuso. Naruto snarled before taking his sword into his free hand. Yes, this power is wonderful. So wonderful. I do not need the priestess anymore. Once I have you, then I will move on to her. I wonder if the rest of your clan tastes the same. I'll devour them all and then nothing will stand in my way of my goals. My 1,000-year kingdom will rise. No one will ever use me again. Morio cried out. Naruto gasped from where he knelt before getting to his feet. His body felt like it was on fire once again. He struggled to stand, but he did. He held his sword as best he could. You think I'll let you hurt them? Not a chance. You think I'll let you hurt Cheyenne-chan? Not a chance. You think I'll abuse you? Not a chance, Dadabayo. Naruto suddenly shouted out. Morio looked at the blonde in sudden surprise of his response before he finally snarled. Naruto quickly gave a smirk as Kyuubi's chakra poured over his body. It coated Naruto's sword and the rest of his form. 9 red tails appeared from his backside while his eyes turned red. His whiskers grew defined. Naruto grinned to himself before he suddenly blurred out of sight. Morio widened his eyes before he looked left and then right, but he didn't see Naruto anywhere in sight. Honshu, Shometsu, power of life, annihilation, Naruto shouted. Morio's heads went upwards as they noticed the young blonde above them. With a great shout, Naruto's white flames blasted from his sword. In response, Morio fired one of his claws in Naruto's direction. Naruto watched the incoming action before he bashed his sword against the claws. Morio roared as a blinding light came over the cavern. Cheyenne cursed as Naruto's chakra suddenly became too bright as she had to close her eyes from the sight. With a loud crash, Naruto slammed into the ground, severing one of Morio's claws. The blonde huffed before he fell on one knee. Morio snarled at him. "Enough of this!" Morio growled out. Naruto widened his eyes as he watched Morio's limbless arm quickly cover itself in malicious chakra. Slowly, but surely he watched as the missing claw grew back before slamming into the ground, making it quake. Morio's roar echoed through the ceiling chamber of the underground cavern. Naruto quickly took hold of his sword and raised it in a defensive stance. He watched Morio's chakra scrape at the inner walls of the chamber viciously. "Better think of something fast, brat," Kyubi said. Naruto snorted to himself. Talk about stating the obvious. Naruto watched as the purple eyes glared into his form before the four heads of the demon quickly raised into the air via their necks. Naruto noticed each head begin to showcase a large red, hot fire. Finally, Naruto slowly nodded to himself. The next move surprised both Morio and Cheyenne as Naruto stabbed his sword into the ground. His hands left the handle. "Oni-sama, what are you doing? Dodge the attack," Cheyenne urgently requested mentally. Both she and the unknown voice in the scape she was in watched as Morio's flames quickly grew brighter. She then watched Naruto take a deep breath. Naruto quickly placed his palms together. Ignore the pain. Ignore the hurt. Ignore the strain. It would have to be worth it. Placing his hands in front of himself, Naruto grunted and strained as he tightened his hands. His honshu flared violently, making his body burn. This, coupled with Morio's taking of the power source, made his arms heat up quickly. His body felt like it was tearing itself in two. Slowly everyone watched as the Jikuyugami appeared in front of Naruto. They then watched as Naruto's 9 red chakra tails rose into the air to surrounded the corners of the portal. The sweat dripped from the young blonde's face. "Shinigami no Jutsu, instant distortion technique," Naruto said through clenched teeth. They watched the portal get smaller and smaller. "You will never get the chance, mortal. Burn in the fire of the one true demon. Ruler of the world," Morio shouted. Cheyenne widened her eyes. "Oni-sama's not going to make it. I have to go," Cheyenne suddenly shouted. The voice remained silent for a second before it made itself known by chuckling softly. "Oh really? And how do you know he won't make it?" the voice asked. Cheyenne quickly looked outward. "I can feel it. Oni-sama's power is being taken, and that's make him exert more force into the technique and stabilize it. He's not going to make it at this rate," Cheyenne said frantically. The voice slowly smirked before sighing. Truly, this was an interesting individual, and why not? This was their successor after all. "Interesting, and what are you going to do about it?" the voice asked, and finally, for once in her life, for real this time, Cheyenne had enough. She quickly threw off her overbearing jacket and let it fall to the ground of the scape. "Enough of these senseless questions. I don't know who you are, and I don't care. I will save Oni-sama. You want to know what I'll give to save him? Then I'll give my life to keep him safe. Now do something useful and tell me how to get out of here, and if not, then stay out of my way while I figure this out. I am a Uzumaki and I won't let Oni-sama die, Databeko," Cheyenne said heatedly. There was nothing but silence through the scape. Cheyenne looked left and right, but it was blank. Well, whatever, she didn't have time to think about that. However, before Cheyenne could do anything, she widened her eyes when she heard laughing. Not bad for a prideful brat. Very well, since you actually had the gall to talk back to me of all people, then I'll help you. After all, I can't let the royal lineage die like this, the voice said, and Cheyenne didn't know how to reply to that, and she didn't have to before the light of the scape brightened. Cheyenne shrieked out as the light covered her body. There were only a few words that she heard in time. Words that she didn't know could ever exist. Shinpi Anzan Kane Fuan, Kai, Mystic Safety Bell Seal, Release. Cheyenne's world blanked out in an instant once those words were spoken. The light scape seemingly exploded. Dai Uzumaki. Naruto. Morio cried out as the flames poured from his mouth. The sea of fire raced for Naruto's body. Naruto grunted before he widened his eyes as the Shinigami faded into nothingness. Naruto huffed while Kyuubi sucked his teeth. TCH. Kyuubi grunted. To think that Naruto had lost so much in that short time was inconceivable. How did Morio take so much already? It didn't make any sense. This wasn't good. Naruto quickly grabbed his sword and he noticed the incoming sea of flames. Naruto gave a somewhat wide smile. The flames bashed into the wall with a mighty crash followed by a loud explosion. Outside, Sasuke, Kakashi, and Sai widened their eyes as the ground quaked and shook. They looked back and noticed the cavern shake behind them. Sasuke narrowed his eyes as did Kakashi. Sai did different and offered a small frown on his face. Sasuke's grip somehow tightened around his sword. He has the Shinigami contract. He can't die. That loser wouldn't die to something like this. Sasuke reassured himself. Kakashi felt a bead of sweat fall down his face. Stay focused, both of you. Sasuke ordered. Kakashi and Sai turned to Sasuke with his back to the cavern. We have our roles and the loser has his. He's not going to die. If he does, I don't care if the Shinigami is his summon, I'll make sure he's miserable in the afterlife, Sasuke said with a smirk. Kakashi widened his eyes before smiling while Sai offered a fake one. That is true. Naruto is Heineken's #1, hyperactive, indomitable shinobi, Kakashi said while Sasuke nodded in return. Sai smiled as they watched the last of the incoming stone soldiers. At the compound, Yugao leaned against the roof of one of the buildings. Inside the building, Yuna kept watch over Sakura as the pink-haired Kunoichi remained oblivious to the things around her. Both females looked at the moon from their viewpoints after the shock subsided. Shikio-sama, you brought Sasuke to me. I will not allow you to leave our lives like this, Yuna softly replied in her mind. Meanwhile, Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes. He half expected to be in a dark place once again with Kyuubi there with him and Shin telling him about his second death. Strange that this death was so warm, inviting and determined. Naruto slowly opened his eyes. Not tonight, Oni-sama. You're not going to die tonight, Oni-sama, came a very soft voice. Naruto groaned before he gasped. He found himself somehow in Cheyenne's arms. Cheyenne smiled at him, only she was different. Around her face were red markings of some unknown origin. Her hair, for some reason, was no longer blonde, but light red just like Taiyuya's. It stood up in a strange way, defying the gravity of the earth, just like a certain one-eyed Jonin sensei that he remembered. Her arms were covered in a blue cloth that went down past her legs, bathed in the light of her strangely warm, divine-like power and appearance. Her regular clothing vanished, leaving her in a thin yellow dress. Naruto couldn't help but blush. Tenchi, Naruto said offhandedly. Cheyenne quickly blushed from the comment to her looks before smiling. What's wrong, Oni-sama? I thought you were going to take me home. You weren't lying to me, were you? Cheyenne asked, and Naruto quickly straightened up. He looked up around them and noticed a large sphere of light protecting them from Morio's flames as Cheyenne set Naruto to his feet. Naruto shifted uncomfortably if only slightly. Cheyenne-chan, what? Naruto wanted to say, but Cheyenne's didn't give him the chance. Oni-sama, in this form I have the power to completely destroy Morio forever. However, it will cost my life to do so, Cheyenne spoke. She watched Naruto's eyes harden over her form before she snickered to herself. I understand. I thought you might disagree with my choice of action, Cheyenne said while Naruto suddenly raised an eyebrow. However, both noticed the flame subside and Naruto could honestly say that if the situation weren't so pressing then he would laugh at the mere shock on Morio's face at the priestess and the Uzumaki standing before him. I will take you home, Cheyenne-chan. That's the promise of a lifetime, Naruto responded. Cheyenne gave a wide smile and nodded. She then softly touched Naruto's shoulder. Naruto widened his eyes as he felt an immense invading force of power. This was not Honshu, it wasn't Yuki, and it certainly wasn't chakra. I know this isn't what you're used to, but bear with it for now, Cheyenne said, and Naruto watched as his body glowed in a bright light. What is this power? They're just mortals. This can't be happening. Morio cried out before Cheyenne's sphere of protection vanished. The light dissipated from Naruto's body. Cheyenne smiled as she watched the blonde take a step forward. Even over 1,000 years old and you still don't understand, Morio. Don't talk so easily about taking over the world when you can't defeat two people. Fine, call us mortals, but we live every day as if it were our last. This is the rule of death, we cannot run from it nor escape it. It will come for us all eventually and the Shinigami will ferry you to the afterlife, Naruto said. Wrapped around Naruto's black Heineken outfit was a white robe gently covered in a bluish light aura. His sword pulsated and illuminated with the same type of light. There was the kanji for the word death on the light robe as Naruto brushed his hand through his hair. Morio snarled while Naruto looked up at him with silver-colored eyes. I will kill you both. I will make sure that you both die. I will enjoy tormenting your souls for all eternity. Morio hollered as he made his way towards the two. Naruto took one of his hands and opened his palm. His sword in his right hand seemed to glow even brighter while Cheyenne clasped her hands together. Oh, Shinigami-sama. You who know life and death as one. You who ferry people to their resting place. Please bless these humble individuals with your divine power. Keep us safe. Keep us near. We beg for you to guide and protect us. Give your servant and summoner the will to succeed. He is worthy. He is right. He is strong. I, Cheyenne Uzumaki of the Uzumaki clan priestesses, beseech you. Guide his strength to his target and vanquish his foe. Cheyenne prayed swiftly. Naruto's cloak flapped in a heavy ray of light while his silver-colored eyes narrowed swiftly. Naruto grinned as he placed his open palm over his sword. Yuzu no Fukushu, Hiryu, Whirlpool Revenge, Scarlet Dragon, Naruto said, the third seal on his sword lighting before dissipating. Morio widened his eyes as Naruto dashed forward impressively while Cheyenne opened her mouth and sang a strange song. It had no words, merely a melody, but Naruto didn't mind that at all. Naruto appeared in front of Morio and brought his sword back. Quickly coating itself in a swirl of fire, Morio seemed to hear the sword roar at him before Naruto swung the sword forward, unleashing a sea of roaring flames over Morio's body. The demon snarled at the blonde over the intense heat. This is not enough to defeat me. Morio shouted nearly at the top of his lungs. Cheyenne continued to sing her song of melody while Naruto snarled. The flames spun wildly through the cavern as Naruto's sword continued to clash itself with Morio's dark, malicious chakra. However, Naruto quickly frowned as he felt Morio's power flare instantly. Its force of strength was enough as the sword blasted from Naruto's grip and went sailing into the air. Naruto watched it flail around wildly before embedding itself into the ground behind Cheyenne. Naruto then turned back as he noticed Morio's heads come together. Die, mortal! Disappear from my presence! The great demon shouted as each mouth began to showcase the intense flames of his fire once again. Naruto narrowed his eyes before taking a deep breath as he held out his hand. It's not that simple, team. Don't you dare speak of death so casually as if you could understand. Naruto hollered as his open hand showed a very familiar technique of swirling, condensed honshu. Morio growled before launching his heavy flames at Naruto's person. Naruto noticed the incoming flames upon his person before a large barrier of light came between him and the fire. Naruto looked back and he saw the transformed Cheyenne now had her arms spread out wide. The light from her body illuminating the ceiling chamber brightly as she did so. Naruto gave a small grin before turning back to the situation at hand. With the shield of light chakra protecting him, Naruto dove into the flames. Morio couldn't stop his surprise. He heard Naruto's resounding shout through the cavern. Quickly he watched as Naruto appeared in front of him unharmed. Morio widened his purple eyes as the swirling sphere in Naruto's hand only seemed to get bigger and brighter, forcing Morio to actually close his eyes from the sheer sight of it. Cheyenne slowly opened her eyes as she watched the sight. Go Oni-sama. Free us both, Cheyenne. Replied in thought while a small smile came across her face. Rasengan, Shinpi Shidama, Spiraling Sphere, Mystic Death Sphere, Naruto shouted before he quickly slammed the pure white-colored sphere straight into Morio's chest. Morio screeched out from the sheer pain. It wasn't possible, there weren't supposed to be regular chakra-based technique that could hurt him. It was impossible for this mortal to have such an intimidating amount of power. What was this? Morio didn't know what to think anymore. Naruto pushed the ball further and further into Morio's body. However, it was a surprise to him that he found the next place that he was in. It was completely dark, formless, lifeless even. Naruto blinked as he looked left and right, but he found nothing at all. He couldn't sense Cheyenne, or even his team outside. Kyubi? Naruto called mentally. There was no callback at all. So he couldn't even contact his partner. That was just perfect. Great, what am I supposed to do now? Naruto asked himself, placing a finger to his chin. Inside Scape, Naruto drifted through the space for seemingly endless amounts of minutes before he noticed a tall, dark-cloaked man. He seemed to be sitting in the darkness meditating somewhat patiently. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto drifted towards the individual, albeit cautiously. Asen, you mind telling me where the hell I am? Naruto asked. He watched as the man slowly opened his eyes to glare at the young blonde in front of him with a savage glare. Naruto widened his eyes to the thought. He had seen these eyes before. The eyes of the betrayed and the hurt. He'd seen them in himself, Cheyenne, Sasuke, and many others. Frowning, Naruto floated forward. Leave now, mortal. Naruto heard the man say. So far only one person had ever called him mortal consistently, and that person was not Kyubi. Morio. Naruto said before the man stood to his feet to glare at the blonde Heineken member. The two stood at arm's length of each other. Blue eyes bore into black. The two glared at each other before they noticed chains sprout from the lower pits of the darkness. Black chains wrapped around Morio's left arm and white chains wrapped around Naruto's right arm. The two blinked for a short time before looking back at each other. Keh, to be chained to an insufferable human. How the great Morio has fallen. Morio said to himself with a short laugh, though Naruto could see that there was no real mirth in his laughter. Hey, it's not like I did this, you jerk. What's your deal? Naruto asked. Morio quickly turned to glance at Naruto before snarling. What's my deal? What's my deal? You humans are my deal. Everything you do is meaningless and worthless. Morio shouted with some force. Naruto widened his eyes if only slightly before he looked down. It could have been his eyes, but he swore that the chains weren't even anymore. Did a little bit of his white chain disappear? Naruto shook his head softly. What do you mean all we do is worthless? The things I do aren't worthless, Dadabayo. Naruto proclaimed before he heard Morio snort to himself. You know why I hate you humans? Because you are hypocritical. You never do what you say you will. Your promises are feeble and so is your power. Why was your kind ever given the right to rule over this planet? Morio asked and Naruto raised an eyebrow. Morio didn't seem to notice the silence, but continued anyway. Always killing each other, always fighting each other back and forth. Your feeble sense of justice is pathetic, Morio visibly spat. Naruto merely let the man talk, narrowing his eyes as he did. You only ever care about yourselves. Even now you seek to stop me from my goals. I tire of these wars. I also tire of helping you humans and never a single appreciation for it in the slightest. My time in this damn seal was more pleasurable than outside in the human realm. Morio called out, much to Naruto's surprise. Naruto's first instinct was to merely shout or rage back, but something told him that this wouldn't work. Naruto could see the man glaring at him heatedly with hurt hidden deep in his eyes. Naruto took a deep breath and sighed. What happened to you? Naruto asked. He didn't know where this sudden wave of concern came over him, but seeing the once great, boasting demon actually look at him this way was a little disheartening, and even if they were enemies, if Naruto had thought about it, then this man, this demon, in front of him had only lived a life just like Kyuubi most likely did. To his response, Morio sucked his teeth and chuckled dryly. Don't flatter yourself, mortal. Don't think that simply me telling you my story will get me to see you any better. It won't. I won't submit to another human ever again. Morio called out. Naruto looked down and widened his eyes. More of his white chain was gone. Morio's black chain came to his wrist. Naruto could feel the negative emotions inside the demon's heart running rampart. It was nearly an overdose. Naruto clutched his head with one hand and knelt on one knee. Heh, look at yourself. So pathetic and weak as you are now. No power for you to use anymore, is there? I will never. Naruto slowly snarled before glaring forward. Would you shut up for a damn second, you coward? Naruto growled out. Morio widened his eyes at the insult before the middle-aged man balled his fists. What did you call me, mortal? Morio asked while Naruto stood to his feet slowly. You're just a coward. Naruto repeated. Morio's response was to quickly grab Naruto's collar and bring him to stare at his eyes heatedly. You dare call Morio, the devourer of souls, a coward? Morio snarled while Naruto frowned. Well, you're certainly acting like one right now, Naruto replied. Morio growled, baring his teeth at Naruto before Naruto closed his eyes for a second before opening them up. Morio frowned as he noticed that the fire in Naruto's eyes was gone. I don't know what happened to you. And I won't pretend that I don't understand. I've been betrayed too by a lot of people. I've been betrayed by Kakashi-sensei, Tsunade-bachan, Sarutobi-Gigi, my teammate, and even my entire village, Naruto said, and Morio quickly snorted before looking away. Naruto didn't break eye contact, but a small piece of his white chain came back. Oh, I'm sure you're going to thrill me with your tale, Morio said with a roll of his eyes. However, to his surprise, Naruto shook his head. Nope. Until you can trust me enough to tell me everything that happened, then I won't tell you. I'd say that was a fair trade, Dadabayo, Naruto returned quickly. Morio frowned before looking into Naruto's eyes. The two beings shared a glance for but a second before Morio let Naruto onto the endless darkness floor. Humph, Cheeky bastard, you are mortal, Morio said with a tiny smirk. Naruto grinned before he finally sighed. However, I know one person who was like that, Naruto said, and Morio's frown slowly returned as he glared in Naruto's direction. Naruto wasn't staring directly at him, but rather to the side. He didn't seem to be focusing on anything in particular other than his thoughts. Morio watched Naruto raise a hand to his stomach or abdomen area. He's been passed around like some fancy piece of jewelry even before I was born. I can't tell how he truly feels having his freedom restricted. He's been with me for 16 years. That's just me. He's had 2 other containers, each which lived full lives. I don't know how many years he had since he last felt the wind in his furry hair, or the sun on his face. How he must have felt to roam on his own with his life free. I doubt I could understand, Naruto said with a sad smile. Morio slowly softened his glare while Naruto chuckled. Only a few months ago is when we started talking to each other regularly. He helps me out. Offers me advice from time to time. I wouldn't consider him subservient to me. He's more like my comrade. There are things I can't do alone that he will help me with. I don't want you to submit to me, Morio-san, Naruto said, and Morio twitched at the small jab to his age, but didn't reply. The black chain slowly diminished, being replaced by a vibrant white chain as the black chains near Naruto's wrist dissolved into the white chain. Keh, like I'll believe that brat. You'll take the first opportunity see you to seal me back up where I am once you're through with me, if I ever gave you the honor of having me in the first place, Morio replied. Naruto blinked before sighing. If you're going to continue to act like this, then I might have to. Morio, I don't know your reasons for this 1,000-year kingdom of yours, and I don't think you'll tell me today, but I want you to know, Naruto said firmly. Morio folded his arms before he noticed Naruto placed a hand over the place where his heart was. If I ever do wrong by you, then by all means you are allowed to devour my soul, Naruto said. Morio widened his eyes in such surprise that he was forced to take a step back. Don't toy with me, brat. I don't need your pathetic soul. I am Morio, devourer of souls. How many souls do you think I have in comparison to you? Morio asked, and Naruto scratched his cheek impishly. Hundreds? Naruto asked, and Morio deadpanned. Try thousands upon thousands, brat. What makes you think I want your soul? Morio asked, and it was Naruto's turn to deadpan to the great demon as he slowly folded his arms. Well, you admitted it only like the whole time that we were on this island, so I would have thought you would have wanted me for something, Naruto replied. The tall black-haired man had the decency to look embarrassed before he sucked his teeth and pouted before turning his head away from the blonde Shinigami summoner. Naruto shrugged his shoulders before the two merely looked at each other. The silence seemed to be deafening to them both, and Morio couldn't help but be shocked as he watched Naruto fall to his knees and bow. Morio, devourer of souls, I request your strength to help me move forward, to protect the things important to me, and let me continue to find my own way. On my name and title as heir to the Uzumaki clan, I will not betray you nor forsake you. Please lend me your power and become my Shinju. Naruto said firmly. Morio widened his eyes as a chunk of the black chain turned into white chain, slowly coming up to Morio's wrist and making its way from his arm and to his neck. Morio watched Naruto's request before growling. Are you deaf, brat? I said that I would never submit to another, Morio growled out before Naruto looked up at him. Then don't submit to me. Don't say that I'm the ruler over you. Don't say that I'm your lord. Just be my comrade. Naruto said, and Morio snarled. I am a near millennium-old demon. I do not need to be the comrade to a lowly, wimpy, spineless. Morio slowly drifted off into his own thoughts. His black eyes bore into Naruto's blue once again before he turned around. He couldn't hold a damn eye to the mortal anymore. What was wrong with him? Morio felt short of breath of a change. No fighting had ever left him this exhausted. He placed a hand to his chest. It felt unbearably hot, borderline uncomfortable. Naruto raised an eyebrow while Morio snarled. He balled his fists in anger. It was so stupid. Everything was so stupid. Bullshit. 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 Stand on your feet, mortal. Do it now. Morio demanded. Someone like this didn't deserve to have his head bowed, much less be on his knees. Naruto blinked before he stood to his feet while Morio closed his eyes. No way. No way could he be thinking about this. No way could he ever think that this was okay. He had learned. Every human was the same. They were not different. No matter how much they claimed to be different, in the end they were all the same. Who did this blonde think he was doing this in front of Morio with this conviction? He was a kami-forsaken demon. A mortal could never understand, be asked for help so many times to a dying nation, offering that damn help then being praised for a short time only to be condemned to a life sealed for the rest of your life. A mortal like you could never understand. Morio growled out. Naruto lowered his gaze to the ground. He then sighed before chuckling to himself. Yep, I don't know what that's like. I don't know if I ever will either, Naruto responded. Morio frowned before quickly turning his eyes away from the blonde. It was obvious that the demon was fed up with this conversation. Damn right you wouldn't. So stop spouting your self-righteous reasons for wanting me. Be comrades with me? Be comrades with a demon? Don't make me laugh. We wouldn't even be acquaintances, Morio replied. Naruto chuckled softly before nodding. True. You've got a point there, Naruto replied. Stop agreeing with me. It's sickening. Morio commanded. Naruto rose an eyebrow before he stopped talking. Morio glared back to Naruto with a solid look. Naruto's eyes merely stared at his equally before Morio finally sighed. Answer me one question, if I ever wanted to stop this instantly would you let me go? Morio asked with a raised eyebrow and folded arms. Naruto tilted his head to the side in thought before placing a finger to his chin. He thought for a brief moment before he sighed. If I did let you go, then would you promise never to do this type of thing ever again? Naruto asked. Morio looked at Naruto blankly for about a full minute. However, to Naruto's surprise, the great demon suddenly laughed. His laughter filled the dark space they were in before Naruto watched the white chain finally make itself around Morio's neckline. The black space quickly turned white, as did the black cloak that Morio wore. Naruto then noticed the man quickly transform into his demon form, all heads in all. The chain around Naruto's arm slowly unsnapped before it settled into his hand, gently connecting with his seal. Naruto widened his eyes before looking up as the multi-headed demon roared through their shared space. You are my first Shinju. Morio, the devourer of souls, Naruto said with a wide smile on his face. Naruto snickered while Morio's roar resounded through the white space they were in before all became too bright and the two faded out. Outside, Naruto opened his eyes in surprise as he continued pushing the ball through the demon's body. His memories came to him in bundles before Naruto grinned to himself. With a loud, determined shout, Naruto bashed his technique into the ground, ensuing a tremendous explosion of the ceiling chamber as it erupted in a white light and the soft pinging of a chime. Outside, Sasuke, Sai and Kakashi looked back in surprise as the mountain exploded. The remaining stone solidars that they were facing slowly dissolved into dust of the ground. The three blinked in surprise before Kakashi gave a small sigh. He dropped his katana to the ground and fell to his knees. His body was sore. Kakashi nearly fell over before Sasuke caught him softly. Thanks Sasuke, this Sharingan can still take a lot out of me after extended use, Kakashi said with an eye smile. Sasuke smirked with a snort. He turned to Sai and noticed the young boy actually smiling pleasantly for a change. Don't mention it, Sasuke said. Kakashi just slowly nodded and chuckled humorlessly. It was then that Sasuke, Kakashi and Sai made their way towards the entrance of the cavern, Sai picking up Kakashi's sword as they did so. Meanwhile on the inside, the light quickly faded. Cheyenne slowly opened her eyes while her ears picked up on footsteps. The angelic-looking priestess smiled brightly as she watched her Uzumaki family slowly make his way towards her. His bright, white cloak flapped softly in a small breeze while he held a small smile on his face. Cheyenne matched his smile, and before long, the silver-eyed blonde glanced down to the priestess. "Your sword," Cheyenne said, handing it to Naruto. The blonde took the sword and sheathed it slowly before letting his arms fall. "If you could stop time for 5 minutes, what would you do?" Naruto asked brightly, and Cheyenne's face seemed to gleam as she took Naruto's hand. "Kokonyugami," Naruto called out, and time quickly stopped for those 5 minutes. It was not a long time at all that Cheyenne got to do what she wanted once time resumed again. "Take me home, Oni-sama," Cheyenne said, and Naruto chuckled with a small nod. "Of course, my priestess," Naruto said. Softly, but swiftly, Cheyenne's hair returned from pink to pale blonde. Her clothes returned to normal as well, and her power faded. Following her simultaneously was Naruto as his eyes lost their silver color. The cloak he wore slowly began to fade away into nothingness, leaving Naruto in his Heineken attire. Slowly Cheyenne fell forward into Naruto's arms before passing out. Naruto chuckled as he watched the small smile on her face. Sighing, Naruto picked her up bridal style and held her close. "Hey loser, you okay?" Naruto looked up and noticed his teammates looking up at him. The blonde quickly smiled. "Just peachy team," Naruto replied. Sasuke smirked while Kakashi chuckled softly. Sai's soft smile faded into a fake one before they quickly began to collect themselves once more. With Sasuke's help, they secured Naruto and Cheyenne while Sai transported everyone to the original compound via Ink Bird. As they traveled through the skies, Sasuke looked back at the sight and snorted softly with a small glare before his mouth flew up into a smile. Sleeping peacefully there was Naruto and Cheyenne, each very tired from the day and its events. Konoha, 3 days later, Tsunade sighed as she continued to do her paperwork. It was just another early morning that the Godame Hokage wished she had never taken the job from her predecessors. She truly missed those days of freedom. Quickly stamping down on a request form, Tsunade sighed as she leaned back in her chair and gave a small yawn. Soon there was a knock on the door. Tsunade grumbled to herself as she really wished she could just threaten whoever it was to leave, but then she would have Shizune on her ass about her duties as the Hokage, and she just didn't need that right now. Quickly slipping another piece of paper into a finished column, Tsunade heard a knock on her door. "Come in," she said tiredly. Truth be told that she didn't feel like dealing with anyone, but it's not like she could tell them off, yet. She watched the doorknob twist and turn until the door opened, revealing her familiar assistant coming through the door. "Message from Sasuke-san and the rest of the team, Tsunade-sama. The mission to Demon Country was a success," Shizune stated happily. Tsunade slowly nodded her head while leaning back into her chair. "I see, well that's always good news, though why couldn't they come back and tell me themselves?" Tsunade questioned. Shizune blinked owlishly before moving her eyes back to the scroll in her hands. Sasuke-san says that they would come back, but Naruto-kun has been unconscious for the last 3 days along with the priestess. Cheyenne-sama experienced a few levels of chakra exhaustion and Naruto-kun has experienced Honshu exhaustion, Shizune said with somewhat of a shrug. Tsunade sighed to herself before rubbing her temples. Granted, the Godame was still getting used to the idea of Naruto having such a contract and thus having to use Honshu rather than chakra. She knew this would happen if she put Naruto in charge of the mission, but Kushina had said that she wanted Naruto to assume the leadership role, so Tsunade just went along with it. Well, he did get the mission done, plus she was sure there would be a debriefing on the events that transpired. Somehow that's not so surprising, but Naruto's always been unpredictable, I guess. Okay, I'll have their funds transferred to their account. Anything else I should know? Tsunade asked. Shizun slowly nodded and cleared her throat. Ah yes, before Priestess Cheyenne went into unconsciousness she also stated that her compound would be, relocating to, Uzushiogakure, Shizun said and then looked up to gauge the Godame's reaction. It wasn't a very good one. Excuse me? Would you repeat that, Shizun? Tsunade asked with a twitch to the smile on her face. Shizun slowly shook her head into a no fashion, not daring to repeat what she had just spoken from her lips. She watched Tsunade grumble to herself before the blonde woman proceeded to slightly bang her head into her desk. That brat. Always doing things like this, Tsunade said to herself. Well, Tsunade-sama, the reason for this is because Cheyenne-san comes from an Uzumaki priestess line. She's the last Uzumaki priestess, Shizun said, reading through the rest of the report. Tsunade, if she had sake right now, would have done the same thing she did all those months ago and literally toss it out the window into whoever was walking the streets at this time. However, after destroying her entire supply of sake, except for special occasions, she had nothing tangible to throw, so she just settled for rubbing her fingers along the bridge of her nose. Actually, now that Tsunade thought about it, she had recalled Mito telling her about the Uzumaki clan priestesses, at least for a time. Tsunade at the time had asked what god or being the Uzumaki prayed to, but Mito never told her, telling her that this was a part of Uzumaki history that she just couldn't tell unless Tsunade went through the Uzumaki clansman passage. At her age, Tsunade hadn't thought much of it, but looking on it now, maybe it held a lot more value than she thought to believe. Just give me the scroll, Shizun. I'll review it later, Tsunade responded. Shizun stood surprised at Tsunade's almost professional answer, but did so before Tsunade allowed her to leave. Shizun left without a word, leaving the Godame Hokage to her thoughts. Tapping her finger on her desk, Tsunade slowly opened up her clothes and took a look at the swirl symbol on her body. It was this that signified that she was an Uzumaki no matter how small the blood was in her body. However, Tsunade knew this, but she was also a Senju. Actually, she was in the majority for Senju blood. Tsunade had to laugh, if only slightly. Here Naruto was building his clan and she was letting the Senju die out. It had to be some type of irony. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter, Tsunade said to herself before she continued writing out some of her documents. Suddenly Tsunade widened her eyes. Looks like I'll need to pay a trip to Uzushiogakure for a moment, Tsunade said with a small smile. Slowly nodding her head, she then went back to her work. Demon Country, Naruto groaned as he opened his eyes. The sunlight gleamed into his face once he did so. What happened? Naruto wondered to himself. Turning his head, he blinked when he noticed Cheyenne sleeping in a separate futon from his own. She seemed to be resting peacefully as far as Naruto could tell with the smile on her face. Good to see you're awake. Naruto turned his head and took notice of Kakashi smiling to him. Naruto chuckled dryly before leaning up, pushing the covers off his body. How are you feeling? Kakashi asked, making Naruto shaking his head slowly. A little sore, but nothing I can't handle. How long have I been sleeping? Naruto asked. Kakashi snickered to himself before he folded his arms. Oh, about 3 days, he said decidedly, dropping the proverbial bomb over the blonde's head. Naruto twitched before his grip on his sheets tightened. 3 days? Naruto hissed silently, prompting Kakashi to put his hands up in defense. The one-eyed member of the Heineken group then took a step back just to be on the safe side. It wouldn't do good for him to have the blonde worked up already. Though given the events that transpired 3 days ago, well, then Kakashi was just happy that unlike the other times, Naruto wasn't covered head to toe in bandages. That's right. You really must have been pushing yourself as usual. I guess you really wanted to live up to that promise, right? Kakashi asked. Naruto slowly calmed down before smirking. He then threw the covers off himself and stood to his feet. As Naruto stood, his gaze fell to the summoning contract seal on his hand. He raised an eyebrow when he noticed that there was now a very small tomo-like symbol etched into the seal, unlike last time. Naruto slowly kept his gaze over the seal for a moment, recalling Morio or, in particular, their conversation beforehand. Shaking his head, Naruto yawned before dressing himself in his attire. Naruto silently closed the door to his and Shien's room before he and Kakashi made their way into the main area. He noticed the stares of everyone on his person. "It's about time you woke up, loser," Sasuke said with a smirk which earned him a light punch to the arm from Yuna. "Didn't see you fighting the demon, Sasuke. Where were you?" Naruto teased, much to his teammates' ire. Sasuke sent a lone glare to the blonde which Naruto readily matched before the two huffed and broke their stares, much to everyone else's amusement. "Well, anyway, it's still good that you're awake, Naruto. We sent a message of success to Godame-sama about 3 days ago," Yugao spoke, and Naruto slowly nodded before he took notice of the person in the corner. The very irritated and slightly tied-up person in the corner. "What are you looking at, Blondie?" the person asked. Naruto proceeded to frown before Yugao sighed. "Don't make me gag you again." "I spared you on a whim," Yugao replied. Naruto rose an eyebrow and turned to Yugao for an answer. Yugao sighed before slowly nodding with a look that said she would talk with him about it at a later date. Naruto acquiesced to her wants. "Ah, fuck you, ya purple-haired bitch," the feminine voice called before Yugao sighed once again. She then walked over to her captive and swiftly knocked her in the back of her head with the blunt part of her sword, knocking her out cold. She then hoisted her captive over her shoulder. "Shizuku-san, you're getting very sleepy all of a sudden," Yugao said before walking out of the house with the former enemy. Everyone sweat dropped when they watched her go before they all heard a separate yawn. "What's with this noise so early in the morning?" Everyone turned around once they took notice of Chien Uzumaki rubbing her eyes tiredly. "Good morning, Chien-chan," Naruto responded. Chien slowly widened her eyes before she took into account everyone around her. "We did it? We did it, Oni-sama," Chien said, and everyone was surprised when she wrapped her arms around his neck, swinging around him wildly. Naruto laughed as she did so. Yamato, Sai, and the fully awakened Sakura just watched the scene with interest. However, Sakura was the only one who seemed to be looking at Naruto rather sternly. The pink-haired medic had woken up the same night Naruto and Chien returned with the success of the mission. At the time, sure, Sakura was happy that they completed the objective, but her happiness didn't last for long once she took notice of Naruto. Ever since learning what she had learned from Koharu, Sakura had been looking at Naruto differently. No, she didn't hate him, at least she didn't think so. But she hated what he was doing. Not only to Sasuke, Kakashi, and Yugao, but also to even himself. The lie he was living, Sakura hated it. Chien finally calmed down from her enjoyment. "Now we can go home, right, Oni-sama?" Chien asked. Naruto seemed ready to answer, but he was beaten to the question by Kakashi. "Unfortunately, Chien-san, it's not that simple. While we could take you, it would still be a question of the daimyo here allowing you to leave. Plus, I do not think Naruto could bring this entire compound into Uzushio," Kakashi said rather simply. Chien quickly turned back to the one-eyed Heineken member with a blank stare before speaking. "Well, I never expected Oni-sama to. Wait, Oni-sama can teleport objects?" Chien asked, and Naruto suddenly sent a scolding look to Kakashi, making the former Jonin rub the back of his head sheepishly. Yamato raised an eyebrow while Sai and Sakura remained confused. Deciding that it was already out, Naruto quickly took control over the conversation. "Hi Chien-chan, it's one of my techniques. However, given its size, the Jikuyugami might not be able to teleport the entire compound. I only say might because I have never tried expanding it, or if that's even possible, Naruto claimed. Cheyenne slowly nodded in understanding before moving on with the conversation. I see. Well, that's fine. I was merely planning to leave the compound as a settlement for the daimyo as well as the land. You see, the daimyo has no true control over the priestess. I can leave to go anywhere I wish. Okasama settled here because we were the only ones who had the ability to seal Morio, but now that he's gone, then I can settle somewhere else. I can have my servants clear it with the daimyo, then we can leave this afternoon if you wish, Cheyenne replied. Naruto slowly blinked before turning to everyone else who seemed to be thinking slightly. We would have to ask some of the civilians there if they would be kind enough to build another shrine compound for us, but it might be doable. Especially given that we have offered to let them stay on the land for a certain time, Kakashi said. Sasuke and Yuna glanced to each other for a second before Sasuke spoke. Building an entire compound for one priestess is hardly something to be done though, unless we know how your clan chose priestesses in the past. I am unsure if even the Uchiha had priestesses, but I was aware that some of the more minor clans did from our history lessons back in the academy, Sasuke explained. Naruto quickly nodded before sighing. Team has a point. I'll have to ask Ka-chan about it, but that shouldn't be a problem. But I am capable of transporting a mass amount of people if that's all. We wouldn't have to use a boat, Naruto stated. Everyone else quickly agreed with that assessment. I can drop Yamato-san, Sai, and Sakura at the mainland, then move back to Uzushio. How is that? Naruto asked. No one seemed to have any objections and decided with that. Just in time too, as Yugao returned. So, have we decided on anything? Yugao asked, and she only had the lasting smiles of her teammates to go by. Yugao could safely assume that there was something she was going to be let in on. She just didn't know how much of a headache it was going to be. So the entire morning went like this. Cheyenne spoke of her relation to Naruto and claimed she would be moving along with the others towards their new location. It surprised her that no one seemed to argue with her statement as people began to quickly start packing their things. Cheyenne then sent a separate entourage of servants towards the daimyo to deliver her message of relocation. It was close to mid-afternoon as Cheyenne along with Naruto stood over a ledge looking out at the sun-filled landscape of Demon Country. For Cheyenne, it was hard to believe that this was the same land that nearly came close to be ravaged just days ago. You seem to be smiling a lot more. Cheyenne turned her head and noticed Naruto looking at her brightly with a smile of his own. Well, I guess I have an annoying reason for that, don't you think, Oni-sama? Cheyenne asked, and Naruto merely proceeded to rub the back of his head. Right behind them were the members of Naruto's team. It was all ready to go. Now they were just waiting for the letter to come back for Cheyenne's dismissal. I think I'm happy because I got my 5 minutes, and also because I have learned about my role in our clan. And as such, to make sure that the priestess line never dies out, I will pass this ability to the next generation. So, how about it, Oni-sama? Will you help me out? Cheyenne asked with an unseen smile on her face. Naruto merely grinned before turning. Sure, Cheyenne-chan. I'll do whatever it takes. It's the promise of a lifetime, Databeo, Naruto replied with a shrug. Cheyenne's small smile quickly widened. Kakashi widened his visible eye while Sasuke's eyebrow twitched. Yuna snickered to herself while Sakura gasped. Yugao and Yamato merely looked at the sight amused. Sai offered a small smile. Whether it was fake or not was anyone's guess. Far off in Uzushio-gakure, everyone suddenly stopped working as they heard a crash to the floor. They looked up and noticed Yuri looking at the ground. On the ground was a broken teacup with the spilled contents on the floor. They noticed Yuri chuckling darkly while she balled her fists hard. Yuri, what are you doing? What happened? Yura asked in sudden worry before Yuri looked up to her sister's eyes and everyone's confusion. Yura Wunshin, someone one-upped me just now. Oi. Suigetsu, get your butt to the training grounds, Databayan. Yuri snarled before she stopped off into her room to go and put on her training gear. There was never a time for training than now. Meanwhile, Sasuke proceeded to smack Naruto over the head. You are such a loser, Naruto, Sasuke said while Naruto growled. Well, fuck you too, Sasuke. Naruto snarled out, getting the two to glare at each other. Cheyenne giggled while Yuna sighed. There went her lover/cousin causing trouble again. It was then that everyone took notice of the 3 messengers that Cheyenne sent. Cheyenne-sama, word from the daimyo. He has sent you off and wished us the best no matter where we go, one of the servants said while Cheyenne slowly nodded. Well, that's that, Onie-sama. Shall we go? Cheyenne asked and Naruto gave a small smile with a quick nod of his head. Quickly everyone began to head off the mountain. Yugao collected her strange captive, Shizuku, before moving along. In little to no time, everyone was gathered along standing at the entrance to the compound, the very empty-looking compound. Each and every piece of clothing or ornament was taken off, leaving the compound to be more of a ghost town than anything else. Alright, before we leave I will take Yamato-san and his group to the mainland and then I'll come back, Naruto said before holding out his hand. He took a deep breath. He felt no pain, his honshu was flowing calmly. There was no struggle for it anymore. It should be okay now. Jikuyugami, Naruto called and everyone watched the medium-sized purple portal appear in front of their eyes. The Heineken team smiled as no one seemed to have to be worried for the blonde anymore. Naruto turned back towards Yamato and his team. You're sure this is safe, Naruto-san? Yamato asked, looking at the technique with interest. He hit it well, his surprise of a technique like this. The amount of energy going to it and from it was amazing. To be able to walk through this was astounding in itself. He turned and noticed Naruto nod before the former Umbua nodded. Very well. Sakura, Sai, let's move. We'll want to make Konoha in 2 days' time, Yamato answered. Sakura and Sai nodded, though the former was hesitant and within reason to be so, having never experienced the technique before. Taking a deep breath, Team Yamato walked through the portal with Naruto right behind them. Everyone watched the portal slowly close thereafter. Mainland, Naruto opened the portal to the near entrance of the port town boat docks, letting Team Yamato walk out. Sakura quickly slumped to her knees. That was an experience, she said, much to Naruto's slight joy. It was that bad, Sakura, Naruto replied before he noticed the pink-haired medic glaring at him harshly. Well, thank you, Naruto. We'll report our side of the mission briefing. I suspect Heineken will do theirs after all things are settled where you are? Yamato asked, prompting Naruto to give a slight nod of his head. Yamato followed the nod before sighing. Well, I have to compliment you on your leadership skills, Naruto. You really have come a long way from what I have read about you. I hope to work with you again. Yamato stated, holding out his hand in a friendly gesture. Naruto scratched his cheek shyly before taking the offered hand, giving it a firm shake. Same to you, Yamato-san, Naruto said before letting go. Sai merely bowed before the two walked off. Naruto then turned just in time to see Sakura glaring at him. Don't think we're done with what we talked about, Naruto. I care about you too much to see you acting like this. You'd better watch yourself, Sakura said, making Naruto narrow his eyes as Sakura ran off to catch up with her teammates. Naruto merely watched her leave before stepping back into the portal and disappearing. Demon Country, everyone quickly straightened up when they noticed the portal appear once again. Out came Naruto before they noticed him smile widely. Your passage to your homeland, Priestess-chan, Naruto said with a mock bow. Cheyenne slowly snorted with a small smile on her face. She slowly walked forward. This was it, she was going home. Away from the place that she grew up. New memories would start here. Wonderful memories would start here. This was a new beginning, a new journey. Arigato Onia-sama. I could never have done this without you, Cheyenne thought to herself before slowly closing her eyes, letting the sun bring its warmth to her face. If you could stop time for 5 minutes, what would you do? Naruto asked brightly, and Cheyenne's face seemed to gleam as she took Naruto's hand. Kokonyugami, Naruto called out, and time quickly stopped for those 5 minutes. Cheyenne gazed into Naruto's bright blue eyes before closing her eyes. Arigato everyone. Thank you everyone. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for risking your lives to allow me to see the future in front of me right now. I'm sorry that I let you down before. Thank you Teruho for always looking after me and staying at my side. I pray for your soul to find eternal rest, which is what you deserve. Watch over me as I forge my path as the Uzumaki clan's priestess. Okasama, I will rebuild what was lost to our family. Thank you for protecting me and giving me life. Also, I hated you and still do, but, thank you Morio, if not for you, I would never have known the family that I have in front of me right now. I won't be afraid anymore. This is my oath. For as long as Cheyenne Uzumaki is alive, she will do what she must for her clan. She is Cheyenne Uzumaki and she is the heir to the Uzumaki priestesses. Cheyenne spoke, making Naruto's smile widen with her words. Cheyenne expressed her thanks more until her 5 minutes were up. Truly they were the best 5 minutes she could have asked for. Cheyenne walked through the portal and her servants followed behind her. Dozens by dozens they disappeared into the portal created by Naruto before finally came himself and his team. Well, looks like we're done here. Let's go so we can fulfill your promise. Sasuke replied, much to Naruto's annoyance. Before he could retort, Yuna pushed Sasuke through the portal with a huff before she followed as well. Yugao dragged Shizuku through as well, along with Kakashi following right behind. Naruto smiled before taking one last look back to the compound. His gaze then fell to the seal on his hand. The single tomo on its center being especially apparent to him. Let's go home, my Shinju, Naruto thought to himself before he disappeared into the portal as well. No doubt his family was going to be in for another surprise, but then again that was Naruto Uzumaki, the master of surprises. Somewhere else, Kusuna huffed before he was roughly dropped to the ground with a large thud. He clumsily stood to his feet with the support of his one arm, the other arm having long been taken in battle by Yuna Uchiha. Out of the shadows stood his masked captor. The animal mask that they wore burned deep into his eyes, causing him to shiver if only slightly. Why have you taken me here? I have to get back and help Yomi-sama with the sealing. Kusuna exclaimed. The masked figure did nothing and said nothing. It was after a few moments did the figure slowly bow on one knee in full servitude. Kusuna raised an eyebrow to the act before widening his eyes as a feel of utter despair and bloodlust washed over his body. It literally forced him to fall to the ground. He felt threatened to take his own life right then and there. He felt like biting his tongue and choking on his blood. He felt like taking his one arm and using his nails to scratch out his eyes in pure agony. What feeling was this? It was so unsightly. So this is another person you feel can aid us? An interesting find given the recent events taking hold over the years, Kusuna heard someone speak. The pink-haired male turned his eyes around, but before he could gaze upon this person he soon found the back of his head grabbed and then slammed into the ground, denying him his curiosity to be sated. You should feel lucky, Kusuna-san. Had my servant not stopped you in time, then I would have sent your soul to wander through endless torment for the rest of your days. It's an uncanny ability of mine, he said. Kusuna then felt the servant release his hold, but Kusuna kept his eyes where they were. Who are you? Kusuna asked. His ears picked up on the shuffling of feet and the sound of a cane smacking against the ground. Okay, so in his mind, Kusuna figured that this man was old. It took some time, but Kusuna slowly heard the person stop. He dared not look up. They say curiosity killed the cat, so Kusuna was going to be the alive cat here. My name really holds no significance, young medic. All that you need know about me is that I am a disciple, a follower, the true heir to our god of slaughter, Jashin-sama. Welcome Kusuna-san, to the center and birth of the Jashin Temple and Jashinism, the man spoke, and Kusuna slowly widened his eyes. As he looked at the ground, he didn't dare look up, though his curiosity was even higher than it was before. This was unlike anything he ever encountered, and unlike last time, he doubted he would make it out alive. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.